After 30 years of marriage, I discovered that Xiao Chu keeps a concubine. It turned out that he stayed at the border for a long time and refused to shed his armor and return to his homeland. Because he already had a wife and children with another woman. My son and daughter knew about these things long ago. Yet they, along with Xiao Chu, deceived me for half my life. Upon learning the truth, I went to the palace to present my petition for divorce. Just after receiving the imperial edict, the 50-year-old Xiao Chu rode back to the capital. Luo Qisha, you're old enough to divorce. Aren't you ashamed? With a head full of gray hair. Xiao Chu frowned and slammed the document he had just handed to be stopped canyoning to the ground. I sat on the chair, knitting tiger head shoes for my grandson, and spoke softly. I don't think so. Perhaps I was too cold. Causing Xiao Zhu to lower his voice. If it's because I didn't go home for this year's birthday, if you're not clear in your heart, I'm sorry. You know I need to stay at the frontier. I can't leave, he explained patiently, always believing that the wife of an aging, jade-like old man like me wanting a divorce was his problem of not returning home for so long. He rarely came back. 30 years of marriage. Today is his 10th return to General's residence. I set the tiger head shoes down. Are you really busy guarding the borders and thus unable to come back? Xiao Chu was stunned for a moment. What are you doubting about me? Luo Qishu, you've been lounging at home all day. Half your body already near death. Don't think about nonsense. I sneered inwardly. It was just a question and he panicked. It's obvious he's extremely guilty. After all, he and I are a match blessed by the late emperor. 30 years ago, the late emperor bestowed a marriage between the Luo and Xiao families. My relationship with Xiao Chu may not be very good, but we always treat each other with respect and courtesy. Xiao Chu once swore to me while wearing armor. Aki, the Luo family is a prestigious noble lineage. Since you married me, I will not let you down. But last month, on the 7th day of the 11th month, on Xiao Chu's birthday, taking advantage of my strong health, I rushed to the frontier specifically, hoping to surprise him and celebrate his 50th birthday. But at the frontier residence, I saw in the open courtyard Xiao Chu gently holding a child about 2 years old, feeding him fruit. The golden sunset gilded his imposing armor, and the child babbled as he reached for the tassels on it. Grandpa, Grandpa, around a large round table on the side, 9 men and women roughly the same age as my son are seated. Dad, come eat quickly. We're celebrating your birthday with Mom. A plainly dressed woman carrying a dish stepped out, and Xiao Chu immediately went forward to take the dish. The two of them gazed at each other, and the tenderness in their eyes pierced my own. Only at that moment did I realize that all these years his guarding the borders had been here in this courtyard, in the midst of other women and children. The scene of their large, happy family made me feel that all the years I spent watching and waiting in the capital had all become a joke. That night, I boarded the carriage back to the capital, and decided to divorce themselves to obtain relief, and give everyone a sense of face. But now, Xiao Chu intercepted my divorce petition, not letting me go to the capital to present myself at court. Xiao Chu saw that I remained silent, and thought I was still aggrieved and angry. He sighed, and, as if devoting himself, sat on the bed. Enough. I'll spend tonight in your yard. Miss Chi-Chi, don't sulk. If I were young, I would be overjoyed. But now, I just cast him a faint glance. Better not. We're both old and stiff. At this age, I know there's nothing he can do anyway. I simply don't want him lying beside me. Xiao Chu-cha saw that I was so ungrateful and his expression grew impatient. I will return to court next month, and from now on I'll stay in the general's residence, never to be apart from you again. Surely you're happy now. After he finished speaking, he rubbed his wrist where there were old injuries, and turned to stride toward the door. I gazed at his upright, tall figure, as if I could glimpse the young him. His wrist, plagued by old ailments from years of wielding a heavy sword, would flare up again if he rode at night after a long day, pulling the reins and mounting a horse. In the past, I would ache at his injuries and personally prepare salves to apply to him. But now, I rise and throw all the salves I once prepared for him into the dry well in the yard. From today, I will throw away all the grievances in this marriage, including him and Xiao Chu. The bright moon hangs high. I spent the whole night cleaning, finally clearing out everything related to Xiao Chu. What does turning 50 matter? I don't intend to spend the rest of my life with a man who deceived me for half my life. The room was filled with trifling things everywhere. I swept a glance around and decided what to burn and what to sink. Everything is tidied up. Dawn has come. Just as I was about to rest, my son Xiao Fengye hurried in. Mother. I was a little surprised to see him. Isn't he supposed to be at Guozijian with his classes at this time? Xiao Fengye strode toward me. Mother. You are of advanced age. Is it because father kept a concubine in the frontier that you want a divorce? A jolt ran through my heart as I met his eyes heated and asked, how would you know? Xiao Fengye's brows and eyes flickered slightly. Then he regained a cold, composed look. Exactly like his father in his youth. Auntie Mu is a lone woman with a single life. She and her father have been immortal partners in the borderlands for 30 years. Praised by every soldier there. How could I not know? I kept it from you. Also for your sake. Aunt Mu. His way of addressing Mu Yunjin is so intimate. I suddenly feel a bit ironic. This son who was frail and crying in childhood, whom I held in my arms and patiently cared for all night, has turned toward outsiders. Perhaps in their eyes, there are women outside only as a trivial matter. I, an old woman, cannot, and should not, make such a fuss over this. I did not contradict him. I suddenly felt some remorse for having given birth to him. Xiao Fengye thought I had been persuaded and let out a sigh of relief. Mother. Harmony in the family brings prosperity in all things. Aunt Mu won't affect your status in the general's mansion. So please don't quarrel about it. Father is rarely at home today. You should go quickly and prepare him a lunch. He used to love the dishes you made the most. I sneered in anger. I'm not young anymore. Yet you still want me to cook. Why don't you let your wife do it? Xiao Fengye frowned in disagreement. She took the child back to her maiden family to visit relatives. And besides, she is the declared daughter of the Mu house. Her 10 fingers never touch spring water. How could I let her cook? His words chilled me even more. And I no longer paid him any attention. I turned around and went back to my room to sleep a bit. Noon. Xiao Fengye, seeing that I was slow to leave the yard, had the servants set a table of mountain delicacies and sea flavors. A family of 3. Finally at the same table. In the past, whenever Xiao Chu was present, I would wait for him to pick up his chopsticks first before I started eating. But today, I treated him as invisible and began eating directly. Xiao Chu looked at my current conduct, not displeased, but after weighing things, he spoke to me. Ah, Qi. This time when I return to the court with victory, I will bring a woman back from the frontier. I lowered my eyes and silently picked at my food. Xiao Chu glanced at my expression and continued speaking. All these years we've lived apart in 2 places. It is impossible that there isn't a single woman by my side. Since you can't accompany me, I had to set up a small home on the frontier. His words oddly seemed to blame me, which was truly ridiculous. I just gave a faint and didn't want to say another word. He forgot that all he needed to do was hand over the tiger tally to the Northern Frontier Army. And he could go home directly. He forgot that I, too, was a woman who could ride across the battlefield. But after marrying him I ended up washing his hands and cooking his meals. Xiao Zhu seemed not to expect that he would reveal this matter hidden for decades. But my reaction was unusually calm. His expression was a bit awkward. But there was no turning back once the bowstring was drawn. He still forced himself to continue stating his plan. Among men in the world, there are always 3 wives and 4 concubines. For these years I have never brought any woman into the residence. A Yun is advanced in age. The frontier is harsh and cold. I want to bring her into the residence to live out her days. I really couldn't bear to listen any longer. And I set down the chopsticks in my hand, when the atmosphere didn't feel right. His son Xiao Fengye on the side couldn't help but interrupt. Father, returning victorious and welcoming new guests is a double blessing. These years, the general's manor has been as quiet as a haunted house. My son would rather there be more people in the mansion to liven things up. hearing his own child, whom I raised almost with half my life, say these words. I was utterly disappointed. Dim-witted as a pig. Is he overconfident? Thinking his legitimate son's status can hereditary the military honors of the general's mansion? Or is he just naively optimistic, believing he can live in harmony with his half-brother of the same father? But at this moment, Xiao Chu nods in approval, his eyes showing a murky light. He who knows me is like my son. Xiao Fengye was encouraged and began to count the good things about that concubine. Mother Mu and father share weal and woe together. Endure toil and hardship serving father for many years. Such a virtuous wife and good mother is a model for the world. Is she suffering? Am I the one who suffers? I was born into a noble family, yet I married into the Xiao family and kept a marriage that was like living in bereavement. All these years I have given everything, yet I did not win the man's heart, nor his understanding or sincere kindness. Even the son I raised with hardship and devotion, just like his father, is cold and unfeeling toward me. I look at Xiao Fengye, at the son I raised with great effort and care. Since you think she is so perfect in every way, why not you change to a mother? Xiao Fengye's expression suddenly stiffened. Mother? That's not what I mean. Xiao Chu's expression also became somewhat embarrassed. Ayun has never cared about the status of the general's household matriarch. Why must you speak such harsh words to your son? Xiao Fengye also eased his expression. Yes, mother. Aunt Mu's existence will not shake your position. A son's mother will always be you alone. I sip the goji tea in my cup lightly, and I find their father and son's duet each more ridiculous and laughable than the last. This is the Xiao clan general's estate. You may decide as you wish. I don't want to waste more time on this kind of crap, and I'm planning to end this conversation. At this moment, Xiaozhu's subordinates hurried over and whispered in his ear. I faintly heard the words Mrs. mistakenly. The text is. Xiaozhu's expression flickered slightly. Then he looked at me with a hint of apology. I have urgent business temporary. Now I must return to the frontier. Won't eat this meal. I didn't try to hold him back. But a trace of unwillingness flashed in Xiao Fengye's eyes. Father, we haven't had a family dinner together for several years. Why don't you finish your meal and then leave? Xiao Chu hesitated for a moment, and patted Xiao Fengye's shoulder a little guiltily. When I return next month, we will be able to have a family dinner every day. I watched the two of them, father and son, silently, lowering my gaze. In the future, Xiao Chu, there will be no me in your future. After Xiao Chu left, I didn't talk much with Xiao Feng either. And I returned to Guiyuan alone. Days passed one by one, and I gradually emptied my belongings little by little. As I aged, I would sometimes look back on the past. I remember in the first year of our marriage, Xiao Chu once gave me a foal. I personally bathed it, combed its coat, and fed it, but it had long since aged into an old horse. And on a night when Xiao Chu's wife and children surrounded him at the frontier, I personally buried it beneath the yellow earth. I dug out the letter Xiao Chu once wrote to me, its paper already yellowed, yet I had kept it with utmost care. His writing is vigorous and forceful, with a sturdy frame and elegant bones. My wife, Luo Qisha, has left the capital for a year. I miss her greatly. The boundless wind and sand of the frontier make me yearn for the capital city, and I constantly long to be by your side. All is well. Do not worry. The very words that once supported me as I guarded the vast general's residence alone. Every single one of them now becomes a glaring presence. I am throwing all the family letters one by one into the stove to burn. He had the servants move out box after box of things from the mansion and sell them off. No one dared to speak up, because those things were purchased with the dowry I paid for with my own money. Only on New Year's Eve did I hear the news that Xiao Chu and his battalion had returned to the capital. As soon as he entered the capital, he went straight to the palace and sought to marry Mu Yunjin as a concubine through his years of military achievements. Subsequently, he methodically bought the mansion beside the general's residence, allowing Mu Yunjin to settle in with peace of mind. The janitors sweeping the snow whispered among themselves. I heard that the general used his wife's dowry to buy a house for Mu Yunjin, and it's just a wall away from the general's bamboo garden. to make it easier to meet. The general even knocked down that wall. The two mansions now form one large estate. If the me from before heard these words, my heart would surely ache terribly. But now that everyone is old, what is the point of caring so much? As for the dowry money, all these years the general residence has relied on my dowry completely. Even if I cared now, it would be too late. I ignored it as if I hadn't heard, and stepped toward the gate of the general residence, colliding head-on with Xiao Chu. He paused, handing me the osmanthus cake he was carrying. For you. I indicated for the nanny to take it, then turned to ask him, why not let Mu Yunjin stay at the general's residence? When mentioning his beloved, Xiao Chu's furrowed brows, already creased, softened with tenderness. Xiao Chu said, Ayun is not like you. She dressed as a man and spent 10 years in the military camp as a general. A woman free on horseback. Not good at interacting with ladies of the inner quarters. That's why I let her live in the neighboring mansion. Firstly for her own comfort. And secondly so she won't distract you. Not distracting my eyes. I sneer inwardly. Xiao Chu thought I was still throwing a tantrum. He frowned and squeezed my hand. He furrowed his brows deeply. Achie. We've been old husband and wife for a long time. From now on I won't let you spend the night alone. From now on, I will go to your place on the 1st and 15th days of the lunar month. And at other times I will accompany Ayun. After all these years you've gotten used to not having me around. But Ayun isn't used to it. You're the head of the household. You should be more considerate. His feigned tenderness gave me a moment of heart attack, a scare. Where did that old man's face come from? Offer my money to support women and descendants. Then buy them a house. And you still want me to be more understanding. As long as you're happy. Right now I have decided to leave. Not wanting to waste words with him. Noon. The winter sun is blazing. I mounted the carriage and headed straight for the palace. I wish to humbly request the emperor to grant me an edict to sever this fated relation between Xiao Chu and me. Before I married into the Xiao family, Yi Hanqing and I were childhood friends who grew up together. At that time he was only the 9th prince, moving among the great noble families. And he would secretly climb over the Luo family's wall to deliver pastries to me. Later I married someone. And gradually had no further contact with him. I don't know if he still remembers me. The palace. Golden throne hall. I caught sight of the yellow-clad figure sitting on the 9 heavens treasure throne. Knight Hanqing has grown closer to knowing his fate. Yet he can still focus intently on perusing memorials, maintaining the same seriousness as in youth. I knelt and spoke loudly. Old Lady Luo Qisha, bowing to your majesty. When he heard the 3 characters Luo Qisha, Knight Hanqing froze for a moment. He put down the memorials and studied me in silence for a while. Aki, after 30 years apart, you're younger than I imagined. I was a bit surprised by Yi Hanqing's impression of me, so I hurriedly bowed. Your majesty, you praise me excessively. Yi Hanqing granted me a seat. And the color in his eyes when he looked at me was a little complicated. General Xiao is bringing his concubine and their descendants for 3 generations. A total of 58 people. Marching grandly back to the capital. He exchanged military merit for the intent to wed a legitimate wife. I know this has caused you to suffer. I shake my head and hand over the memorial. Your Majesty, I didn't come for this matter. Yi Hanqing is startled when he sees the memorial. I heard that you once submitted a severance from bed and board memorial. Halted by General Xiao. Did you come here this time for a divorce as well? I speak word by word. Not divorce. But to stop the marriage. The knight chilled and Yen Chong sighed deeply. At your age you should not wed again. What will you do in the future? Or you could enter the palace and be my concubine. My heart skipped a beat. I wanted to leave Xiao Chu. But there was no need to jump from one pit of fire to another. If Xiao Zhu sleeps with a woman, I would find it dirty. In the cold night, he bows to the emperor, and the harem has 3,000 beauties. I cannot directly thwart his wishes. I can only decline politely. Your Majesty, I am an old woman at my age. Entering your harem would truly be improper. The knight coldly tilted Feng Su's eyes at me in a glance. And I could see my reluctance. He sighed. I just want you to accompany me in the palace to fish and chat about matters of the heart. If you're unwilling, then so be it. Fortunately, Yi Hanqing did not force me to stay, and promptly granted me a divorce edict, letting me go. As I left the palace, I felt greatly relieved. As if my aging bones had become a lot lighter. Tonight is New Year's Eve. Because Mu Yunjin just entered the residence, Xiao Chu specially arranged the reunion feast in her yard. The children have all gone, but I did not attend due to feeling unwell. What the eye does not see, the heart can be free from worry about. The sound of fireworks and firecrackers from next door, and the laughter and play of children, continued until midnight. I, in my own Guiyuan, did not sleep the entire night. The next day, Xiao Chu came to see me. 50-year-old Xiao Chu's face had aged, but his brows and eyes still held the sternness from memory. What is it that you come here for, General? He coughed once, as if his old face felt embarrassed. Today is the first day of the month. I was stunned for a moment, only half a beat late to realize he was fulfilling his promise to come to my yard on the 1st and 15th. But I, Luo Qishu, have spent most of my life alone. So why would I covet the companionship he offers as charity? I opened the drawer, just about to take out the imperial edict of divorce the emperor gave. Xiao Chu's voice made me abruptly stop moving. Tomorrow is the 2nd day of the 2nd lunar month. My daughter will come home to pay respects. Please remember to prepare well. Daughter Xiao Lihua married into the Eastern Palace last year and became the crown princess. Returning to one's parental home on the 2nd day is a grand rite of paying respects. Xiao Chu walked over to me, hesitated for a moment, then stretched out his thickly calloused hand and wrapped it around my waist. My body stiffened, and I instinctively brushed his hand away. I've started my period today, General. You should go find the Mu family. This was a lie to him. I went through menopause 3 years ago. But Xiao Zhu had never taken such things to heart at all. It's a good sign that menstruation still comes. Later we'll have another child. Xiao Zhu droned on about how he had personally carved a small wooden sword for one grandson, and made a wooden horse for another granddaughter. In the future, when I have another son for him, he will surely make a cradle by hand, guard the child daily, enjoy the flowers, raise fish, and live out his years in ease. I listened to his longing and only felt ironic. For someone who has already been embraced by his grandson, he still wants me to bear him a son. How shameless and arrogant. All day, I found excuses about not feeling well to avoid giving Xiao Chu a good look. He, alone, was dull and bland, and could only reluctantly get up and leave. I didn't care whom he went to find, and continued packing my belongings, taking stock of all the remaining dowry and family assets I had brought with me. The 2nd day of the Lunar New Year, the day of returning to the clan, Xiao Lihua in a splendid outfit returned to the general's mansion. After a year of not seeing each other, when she saw me, she greeted me with scolding and complaint from the very start. Mother, why on earth are you causing trouble and wanting to divorce father? If you leave the general's residence, people in the world will only mock me for having a mother who was kicked out. If I lose my status as the legitimate daughter, what will I do in the future if I can't become empress? Listening to her endless complaints and accusations, my heart grew colder inch by inch. I nearly destroyed half of my life just to have this daughter. She has been frail since childhood, and I cook for her myself every day, simmering fish soup and boiling bird's nest tonic for her, fearing she would find life in the boudoir dull. I secretly carved a hidden door in the back garden and pretended not to notice when she slipped out. I personally taught her how to draw a bow and how to sword dance. And I told her, if one day you are in grave danger, neither music, chess, calligraphy, nor painting can save you. Only with a blade in hand can you truly safeguard yourself. When Xiao Lihua was little, she waved her small arms and legs, swearing with all her heart, Mother, when Ahua grows up, I will protect you every day. The girl who once sweetly called mother is long gone. What's left is this stranger, cold as a prince consort. In front of me, I suppress all disappointment and speak calmly. Have I wasted most of my life for you two siblings? Only to be pointed at and yelled at by you now. Xiao Lihua's complexion stiffened a little. The crown prince's heart isn't with me. Without the marshal's legitimate daughter status, he won't make me the consort. Mother, you must consider me more. A wry smile formed in my heart. They say daughters are a mother's warmest little quilt. But mine, once grown, would leak from the wind. At first I told her that entering the palace is as deep as the sea. That she should not marry into the royal family or get involved in palace intrigue. But she insisted on entering the palace and took the initiative to curry favor with the crown prince. As a mother, I respected her choice and only wished that she could be happy. Now, I hope she can also respect my choice. Ah Hua, I have thought about you for 20 years. And now it's time to think about myself. Xiao Lihua's face darkened with displeasure. No wonder all these years he'd rather stay on the frontier with Aunt Mu-Yi than come back to be with you. If only my mother were her. That would be great. After speaking, she dried her reddened eyes with a handkerchief, turned, and walked away. I watched the back of her, and I did not retrieve it for a long time. Perhaps it is that so many disappointments have accumulated over the years. At this moment, my heart is as still as water. It's okay. Ah Hua. Soon, your mother will be her. After Xiao Lihua left, I continued weaving the tiger head shoes for my little grandson that were not yet finished. The empty osmanthus garden feels cold and desolate in winter. Even if more coal fire is added in the house, it still can't become warm. Xiao Lihua returned grandly to her natal family, and then hurried back to the palace, without even sitting down to have a single meal. Xiao Zhu exploded in a rage, shifting all blame onto me, accusing me of not personally cooking a good meal for our daughter. Isn't it enough that you're quarreling with me at your old age? Our daughter hardly comes home, and you still want to make trouble with her and make things unpleasant. I found it ridiculous and had no intention of saying another word. It won't happen again. I no longer need to have a future with them. My meek tone made Xiao Chu vent his anger for a moment. He looked around and finally noticed the anomaly. Why is the room so empty? It looks lifeless and dull. I stabbed the tiger head shoe with the embroidery needle, biting through the thread. We've lost some useless things. They have been on display for 30 years. I've grown tired of them. Just like you, Xiao Zhu. I'm tired too. Xiao Zhu couldn't help reproaching me. Save a bit. Don't be so wasteful. Leave some fortune and luck for your descendants to spend. I took in the impatience in his eyes. If the old doesn't go, the new won't come. Right. My words made Xiao Zhu stiff for a moment, as if he heard the subtext in my words, and his expression became a little unnatural. Spouting nonsense. Tomorrow morning I'll take you to East Street to look at the coffins, and later we will be buried together. For a moment, a trace of guilt flashed in his murky eyes. Just a 3-person coffin. Ah, Yun will be buried with the 2 of us as well. Who will be buried with them? I frowned and blurted out. Set a coffin for 2. My rebuttal made Xiao Chu think I disagreed with his joint burial with Mu Yunjin. A Yun has stayed with you at the frontier and me for so many years. Even bore so many children. Even if you have no merit, you should at least bear her hardship. Won't you fulfill her wish? If I hadn't already given up long ago, I'd be seething to death by this man's words right now. Either 2 people in 1 coffin, or each buried separately. I didn't want to explain further, and directly issued a banishment order to Xiao Zhu. Stubborn and ignorant. Xiao Zhu's expression sank, and he swept away in a huff. That very night, an uninvited guest arrived at the Guiyuan. The uninvited Mu Yunjin sat down with a smile. And although her every move carried the elegance of age and experience, but the wrinkles crawling at the corners of her eyes were undeniable. She is older than me, but I never thought she looked so aged. But then I thought about it. She endured wind and sun on the border, and continually exhausted her vital energy to bear children. It is absolutely impossible to be as spirited and vigorous as I am. Mu Yunjin looked at me, spoke bluntly to get to the point. In these 30 years, you and A Chu have been apart often, with little deep feelings for each other. But I'm different. We, like ordinary spouses, live together day and night, guide each other in domestic matters. Everyone in the army calls me Madam. You may not know, More than 30 years ago I shared a strong affinity with the fox demon A Chu. But the Shao family did not agree to let him marry me. Ultimately I urged him to accept the alliance with the Luo family and marry you. I calmly took a sip of ginseng tea and looked up at her. So you've spent most of your life at the borders, rising from the third son to the second wife. Traveled thousands of miles with Shao Chu to the capital, just to tell me the love story of your half-life. Mu Yunjin's smile at the corner of her lips stiffened, and the weathered face gained a touch of awkwardness. After a long while, she spoke again. Zhu is regretting that I couldn't marry into the Shao family, and specially had your son marry my niece Mu Jini, so that the knot in my heart would be untied. Luakiki, the title of general's wife is something I granted you. And the marriage fate of your son is also what I have closely tied. I just want to be buried as Shao Mu's family with a Chu after I die. You can't even fulfill this small wish of mine. I froze in place. No wonder all these years, no matter how nicely I treated my daughter-in-law Mu Jini, she has always disliked me. It turned out that it was because she and Mu Yunjin are related by blood. I watched the provocation in Mu Yunjin's eyes and brows rise, and my face remained as calm as ever. In order to be the shadow wife of Shao Chu who must not be seen, you gave up your own given name and family name, and you wouldn't even return to the Mu family for 30 years. Mu Yunjin, is it worth it? Mu Yunjin's smile remained, but her calloused hands clenched the wide sleeves. She couldn't answer. I glanced at Mu Yunjin's aged appearance and suddenly felt a bit pity for her. She is the same age as Shao Chu, yet she looks old and withered, her eyes already glassy and pale. I sighed, withdrawing my gaze. I don't want a marriage or a coffin. If you want them, take them. Mu Yunjin's face instantly flushed. I don't need your charity, because this is something I deserve. She frowned, stood up, and left in a state of embarrassment. After Mu Yunjin left, I began to orderly instruct the nanny to buy the house of my maternal family in Zhengzhou. And I hired servants to sweep the courtyard, so that I could spend the rest of my days leisurely like drifting clouds. From youth to old age, I have always managed affairs at the general's manor. Now, it is time for me to consider myself and enjoy my old age. Shao Chu led Mu Yunjin out of the residence, and with great momentum went to the East Street to buy coffins. They are not at home, which makes it convenient for me to go to the storeroom to inventory the family property. The cold wind whistled through the window of the coffin house as I sat calmly in the chair, turning the ledgers page by page. I intend to take away my original dowry exactly as it was back then. I don't want any of the other things at all. I don't want my son or daughter either. I have raised them to be adults, with husbands for the men and wives for the women. Even Shao Chu has begun a new life. But they don't know. Up to now, the large and small expenditures of the general's mansion have been filled with the dowry I brought. The reason the Shao family did not agree for Shao Zhu to marry Mu Yunjin back then was that the general's mansion had already run empty. They needed someone with a rich family like me to fill the holes. Now that I am leaving the Shao family and taking my own dowry money, it is only natural, seeing my entourage move box after box of the dowry away. The housekeeper was as anxious as a cat on a hot stove, wanting to stop her but not daring to. Madam, if you take all these things, what will the general's estate do? I wore a cold expression. Ask your new mistress of the household to think of a way to support the family. The housekeeper's face tightened. Madam, 1 day of marriage earns 100 days of grace. You really won't care for the master. I sneered. Shao Chu and Mu Yunjin's marriage is far more blessed than mine. I threw the imperial edict, the sacred decree bearing the words divorce, at the butler. I have raised 135 people in the general's mansion for 30 years. And now you want me to support Mu Yunjin's family as well. Pure delusion. Go back and tell your general that the emperor has allowed me to divorce my husband. I don't want him anymore. After speaking, I turned and walked away in large strides, returning to the Guiyuan. I swept the room that had housed me for 30 years and had the old nanny pack up my belongings. People say that when you grow old you must have a companion. But now I just want to return to my hometown, to the place where I grew up from childhood. For half a lifetime, the only place that can truly reassure me is my own hometown. born and raised by my own blood. After packing up everything to take with me, I personally carried a bucket of oil around the yard, pouring it in circles, and tossed in a match. A cluster of faint flames leapt up and burned into a sea of fire, lighting up a vast sky over the general's mansion. Grandmother was momentarily stunned, but she did not stop him. In the blaze of the waves, I turned and left. Since I'm leaving, I'll go clean and decisive, not leaving a single spider's web in the corner of the courtyard. Dust returns to dust, and earth to earth. From now on, the governor's mansion's Gui garden will no longer bear any trace of my life, and the Shao family will no longer be connected to me. Thick black smoke rolls in, refracting mottled starlight as light and dust blend together, and I have completely left behind this prison that had trapped me for 30 years. East Street. A coffin shop. Xiao Chu had repeatedly asked the boss to customize a board for a 3-person coffin. But Mu Yunjin kept staring at the finished product of a 2-person coffin with irresistible fondness. He felt somewhat unsettled. Even though Luo Qisha say she doesn't want a 3-person coffin. She's already of an advanced age and can't make a big fuss anyway. He who is the head of the family, once he speaks, his words become decisions, not discussions. I had thought Mu Yunjin would understand people's minds and know his true thoughts. But I didn't expect this woman to be so obtuse. Considering the coffin watching in the new lunar year is unlucky. Go back. Xiao Chu didn't wait for the woman behind him, and he directly mounted the carriage with swift and decisive action. I didn't expect that just as we reached the gate of the residence, the butler rushed out in a flurry, stumbling and taking a big spill as he crossed the threshold. Master, disaster strikes. The Guiyuan is on fire. Xiao Chu's expression changed at once, and he sprang down from the carriage. Where is the lady? The butler trembled as he handed the imperial edict to Xiao Chu, his face as pale as death. The madam has taken all the treasury's silver and money, leaving you only this divorce decree. She has already left the city. Clack. The warming stove in Xiao Chu's hand smashed to the ground with a loud bang. He opened the decree. The blinding characters struck him like a thunderbolt. This is impossible. But that conspicuous jade seal in the bottom left corner looks incredibly real. That woman, who from the very beginning wanted a divorce, has become a widow. The housekeeper was so anxious on the side that he was at a loss. The fire in Guiyuan has been extinguished, but everything has been burned to nothing. Now there's no money in the warehouse to repair things. My lord, what will the general's mansion do in the future? The butler's despairing mutterings did not reach Xiao Chu's ears at all. His mind was still in a daze. Beside him, Mu Yunjin stepped forward, displaying the demeanor of the head wife. The master and I brought back some silver from the frontier. You send someone to properly repair and stabilize the hearts of everyone in the mansion. The housekeeper, seeing Xiao Chu hesitate to speak for a long time, could only follow Mu Yunjin's arrangement as the urgent matter, and hurried away. On the other side, Luo Qisha sat in the carriage, leisurely as she went all the way to Zhenzhou. There was the mansion she had long prepared, as well as her retirement life plan. Since she married Xiao Chu at 15, she has been trapped in the capital. In the beginning, Xiao Chu had not yet gone to war. At that time, she didn't feel bored, because when he was at the mansion, he often practiced moves with her. A martial hero family naturally appreciates those who practice martial arts. Zhao's mother treated her well, not the domineering, aloof courtesan of the capital, but rather gentle and polite toward her. Later she learned that the general's household was indeed short of money. Xiao Chu's father sacrificed himself on the battlefield for the country, and several of Xiao Chu's older brothers all died on the front lines, leaving behind a group of women, children, and the young Xiao Chu. The already money-strapped general's household was like adding frost to the snow. Her arrival relieved them of their pressing financial distress. The carriage traveled a distance, and the coachman stopped to feed the horses. Luo Qishu enjoyed the lush green of the dog's tail grass from outside, and Granny Wang teased. When the old madam was safely seated in the main hall at home, she was always morose. Now she comes out and even the wild grasses by the road are precious to her. Luo Qishu looked up at her and smiled. Not only did she treasure the wild grasses, she even treasures the wild wind. She snatched a guard's horse, deftly swung onto it, and the movement caused Nanny Wang's eyelids to twitch. She hurried forward. Master, you're at such an old age now, and people will see you. Listening to the worry in her tone, Luo Qisha gave a slight smile and interrupted. Don't mind it. She had already divorced Xiao Chu when she was 45. Breaking the rules and behaving rebelliously for an old woman is nothing at all. Nanny Wang was stunned, and together with her attendants, they stared blankly as her master lifted the riding whip and sped away. Although Luo Qisha was all white-haired, she looked vigorous and energetic. With bright eyes and clear features, everyone in the capital praised her as a perfect, flawless woman, thrifty in living, capable in managing the household. Today the attendants finally understood that she had originally been a willful person. Grandmother Wang shook her head, truly unable to understand why the old general did not like his own wife. Night fell. A group arrived in Zhengzhou. Luo Qisha, a spirited and vigorous old lady, rode on horseback, drawing the eyes of the townspeople and sparking whispers. Who is that noble woman? She looks rich. Being her concubine wouldn't be bad either. In the next moment, a man in a white brocade robe stood in front of Luo Qishu's carriage and horse, holding a bunch of pink jasmine. I consulted the fortune teller at the temple yesterday, and he said I would meet the person who will grow old with me today on West Street. Seeing you today, I finally understand what is destined by fate. Luo Qishu was stunned for a moment. An elder Wang frowned heavily, stepping in front of her. Where did this lecher come from? Bring someone. Escort him to the official's office. The man heard this. His expression changed, and he hurriedly slipped away in a panic. Luo Qisha's expression was somewhat strange. Is the world outside like this now? The changes really make this old lady feel unsettled. The emperor, because of the childhood affection, wanted to take her as a concubine into the palace. She could understand that. But there were peach blossoms along every path she walked. Luo Qisha sighed, got back into the carriage, and took out the Aster book to reread. Nowadays, the only thing that matters is being well read. Even bamboo paper has thus changed in the marketplace. From 20 yuan per sheet 30 years ago to 100 yuan per sheet today. Just keep going forward. Luo Qisha didn't expect someone from the Shao estate to come chasing after her. Madam, this letter was delivered by the old general's messenger. Luo Qisha guessed that it must be a letter scolding her for making trouble, burning down the manor, and leaving without saying goodbye. She had Aunt Wang take the letter, and she drove away the people from the Shao estate with a cold face. Shake them off. Don't let those people over there chase after you. As soon as I arrived at the Zhengzhou manor, Luo Qishu saw the butler with the servants waiting at the courtyard entrance. The butler wore a broad smile. Master, someone has sent you a huge gift in the courtyard. Snowflakes that fell from the sky pressed onto the peach trees in the peach blossom courtyard. Still unopened, rustling softly, found the grand gift the butler mentioned. And for a moment her expression froze in astonishment when she saw the palm-sized box. Who sent this? Her question landed, and when she opened the box, she got the answer. Inside were ledger-like scrolls of shops, and the red official seals stamped in the gap symbolized the status of royal merchants. Nurse Wang hesitated and asked, Master, shall we take it? Lu Qisha couldn't quite read the emperor's meaning, but money that is sent to you shouldn't be refused. She calmly nodded. Take it. The courtiers exchanged puzzled glances. Lu Qisha's voice sounded again. Where is the letter sent by Xiao Chu? Nanny Wang composed herself and answered. In my case. Besides this letter, the old general later had someone pass along a message. She found the words tedious and did not want to repeat them to her mistress, nor did she have time to tell her. Luo Qisha waved her hand. But say it anyway. Nanny Wang's eyes flashed with a trace of disdain. The old general said that if you are not back in the capital within 3 days, he will install Mu Yunjin as the proper empress. The newly bought maids were a clever bunch, and one purple-clad maid offered up a plan. Shall the master teach Mu Yunjin a lesson? We know a few courtesans from the brothels, who can captivate people. We'll surely have the old general beguiled and make Mu Yunjin taste a life as though she'd lost her husband. Luo Qixia took a sip of goji tea and laughed softly. I know you're thinking of me. But Mu's family doesn't deserve this. And she's practically a pitiful person. Being a woman herself. Why should she make things difficult for someone who's even older and less capable than she is? Having gathered her divine power, Luo Qixu calmly opened the letter. The familiar handwriting leaped into her sight. You have returned now. I, the general, will overlook the past. Luo Qixu tugged at the corner of her mouth and without the slightest hesitation, threw the letter into the furnace. Suddenly, sparks flew in all directions. A plume of black smoke rose up, blocking the indifference that lay in her eyes. Getting divorced. Life still has to go on. Luo Qixia's shop in Zhenzhou is untouchable by anyone. Moreover, after years of managing the expansive Xiao family, her network is vast, and with dozens of shops in the small city of Zhenzhou, she practically has them under her thumb. The young maid spent all day fawning around her. Your ladyship has keen insight, not only making the business prosper, but also having the spare energy to mentor other shops. Truly admirable. Luo Qixu smiled and couldn't help asking. You really know how to talk. Unlike me. Her words trailed off. After spending these days together, everyone had somewhat learned about her past. I also know who she is talking about, the Xiao family. The maids all feel indignant for her. Luo Qixia also feels a bit sour. Those people clearly rely on her to live. Yet they say she only cares about money, that she is naggy and bothersome. Not as understanding as Mu Yunjin. She doesn't want to recall those memories. Waves a hand and says, today's shop patrol ends here. After she finished speaking, she turned and was about to leave the silk shop. A servant dressed as a page ran hurriedly to Luo Qixia. Madam, the general has a letter for you, and he specifically instructed the servant to keep an eye on you until you finish reading. The smile on Luo Qixia's face gradually faded. She stared at the servant with a blank expression. And the servant lowered his head even more under that sharp gaze. Fine. Luo Qixia is a magnanimous person, and it's not good to argue with a servant. So she tore the letter up in front of him. You, an old woman. Who would want you after you leave me? Luo Qixia gripped the paper tightly, then slowly smoothed out the crumpled sheet and turned to the satin shop's counter to pick up a brush. She was speechless to the extreme at this moment, wanting to curse back on paper. But she was at a loss how to start. The clever maid boldly said, My lady, let me do it. Luo Qixia was stunned. You, go ahead. Maiden Zixia took the brush she handed over, and quickly wrote on the paper. Your hair is already as white as the maggots on your father's corpse. That thing is as thin as a needle, and when firm it's as short as a thumb. How can you still be so confident? Luo Qixu and her followers all stuck their heads out to look, stunned into silence for a long time. Handing the letter back to the pale-faced servant, Luo Qixu sauntered toward the peach blossom courtyard. From this, she could tell that the author of that letter, Xiao Chu, was angry. His vanity has always been strong. In his eyes, if someone offends his face and even makes a scene in front of the emperor, he will surely hold a grudge against that person. But Luo Qixia doesn't understand. What's there to be angry about? She left. Which isn't exactly what Xiao Chuji had in mind. He happens to be able to remarry, taking Mu Yanchen as his wife. And in 2 or 3 years, he can openly and rightly be buried together with Mu Yanchen. Thinking of this, Luo Qixu's eyes involuntarily filled with a trace of wistfulness. Her children were unfilial. Her husband disliked her. When she dies in the future, who will handle her affairs? Unknowingly, she spoke her innermost thoughts aloud. Aunt Wang on one side spoke softly. The master can let His Majesty handle it. Lu Qi, she didn't say yes. Nor did she say no. She only sighed. Nanny Wang, I haven't seen my mother in a long time. Tomorrow, we will go and sweep my mother's tomb. As for what happens in the future, she is sturdy and resilient. So there's no need to rush like Mu Yunjin and Xiao Chu. Nanny Wang let out a soft and quietly followed behind her back to the mansion. Luo Qixia returned to the courtyard, took a simple bath and washed up. then went back to the main house to rest. She specially redesigned the courtyard to resemble its layout from 30 years ago, so that she could feel at home. But this sleep, she turned and tossed restlessly, after sinking into a hazy sleep. She dreamed many bizarre dreams. There were conversations and laughter with Yi Hanqing from her childhood. At 15, she first saw Xiao Chu, and the red tent swirled. At 30, she stands on the city wall, gazing after Xiao Zhu riding away once more. A tinge of bitterness. Fragments of tangled memories keep flashing by. The final frame lingers on Xiao Chu and Mu Yunzheng and their family, harmonious and peaceful. As he gazes at her with deep affection, that gaze stabbed Luo Qisha's heart and she woke up from the dream in a start. She rubbed her brow and decided to move out of the peach blossom courtyard first, then rearrange the layout of the courtyard. But before that, she needed to go see her mother first. It was indeed January, and winter snow had not melted. In the western outskirts of Zhenzhou, a great tomb stood under a century-old peach tree, with a stone stele that read the tomb of Lady Luo. Luo Qisha slowly knelt down, her expression neither lonely nor sad. She adjusted the incense in the censer, arranged them neatly, and gave a faint smile. She looked at the grand tomb. Mother, Xiao Chu and I have parted ways. He isn't a good man. It's just that I have wasted 30 years with him. I'm aging now, nearly at the end of my days. In the days to come, when I go down below. Please don't laugh at me. The wind blew, and for a moment the branches swayed. Yet no peach blossoms fell. In the air there was only the cool taste of white snow. The main reason Luo Qisha chose to divorce and return to her old home in Zhenzhou was largely due to her mother. She accompanied her mother to visit twice to her maternal grandfather's home. Once when she was 5 and once when she was 10. When she was 5 years old, whenever her mother returned to her maiden family, she would lie on the coffin and cry silently. At that time, Luo Qisha was still very young. She couldn't even tell whether the person in the coffin was her grandfather or grandmother, and could only bite her hand. And when she was 10, Luo Qisha began to vaguely understand what her mother's family was like. Her mother stroked her head, eyes red with tears. Your father argued with me. He's taken a woman outside. I can't swallow this grievance. Will you and your mother go back to your maternal grandfather's house? I only have you left. So Luo Qisha remembered. When you quarrel with your husband, you should go back to your maiden home. If you can't swallow your grievance, go back to your maiden home. The maiden home is always the source of a married woman's confidence. But Xiao Chu was far away on the border, and she didn't even have the chance to argue with him. 30 years have passed, and Luo Qishu no longer possesses the temper of youth. Even if she discovers that Xiao Chu keeps a mistress, she would only fall silent and taciturn. She has loved him, and she has hated him, and all of her feelings for him, with the arrival of winter, dissipate into the wind like the scent of peach blossoms. Luo Qishu doesn't know what Xiao Chu is thinking. She cannot fathom the mindset of a man who only returns home 10 times in 30 years. In a month, her life in Zhenzhou was as if she had found her place. Besides running the shop, she often went to the Pear Garden to watch opera. Xiao Chu, unusually, did not scold her harshly because of that letter. Quiet and silent, it was a bit like a one-sided Cold War with her. Only when she received a letter from a close friend in the capital did Luo Qisha learn that Xiao Chu had entered the imperial palace several times, hoping to obtain an imperial edict to capture Luo Qisha on the grounds that she had embezzled the general's household's property. His Majesty not only did not govern him, but also scolded him in front of all the courtiers. As for how dirty the insults were, there's no record of them being spread. Meanwhile, the shop's stewards bring good news. Last month's sales revenue has doubled compared to previous years. Luo Qisha looked at the 32,700 taels of silver on the ledger, beaming with joy. With a sweeping gesture, she rewarded everyone below with a month's salary. On the other side, after being rebuked by His Majesty, Xiao Chu calmed down. He walked through the general's residence and asked the servant impatiently, "Has the old madam not returned yet?" The servant shivered and shook his head. The shaking head and the monarch's rebuke overlapped. instantly reminding Xiao Chu of that curse-laden letter and the ending letter of resignation. They were like an invisible slap suddenly landing on Xiao Chu's face. And in his heart he felt an immense anger once again. But he quickly vented his anger again. He could still receive madman Luo Qishu's curses, proving that she hadn't ignored him completely. At that moment, Xiao Chu name inexplicably felt a sigh of relief. But after walking only a few steps, he struck the stern expression of the butler. "General, we can't afford the wages to repair the Guiyuan." Xiao Chu was stunned, and his thoughts turned foggy. What? Just a small courtyard that's burned. How much money can it cost? My Grand General's mansion is so vast. How could we not even spare this amount? Is the general's residence really so poor? He remembered again how the emperor scolded him, saying that he was a freeloader. At that time, the ministers looked at him with disdain. Xiao Chu had stayed in the military camp for many years, and he had heard every kind of insult. But for once, he explained something in front of the 100 officials. "I've spent 30 years on the frontier drawing from my own salary." If this sentence is spoken aloud, the eloquent civil official would mock him for a long time with sarcasm. Almost forgot. The old general has indeed settled a home on the frontier, to feed 2 households. You can't rely on one person's salary alone. Xiao Chu naturally grows irritable, but he has to pinch his nose and endure this suffocating atmosphere. After the next morning, he turned around and said to his friend, "A group of waste who can only wield their pens, what do they know? A Yun and I are true love." His friend frowned at him, wanting to speak but stopping. Xiao Chu's voice was cold, carrying a heavy weariness. "If it weren't for Luo Qisha, I would have married my beloved 30 years ago. Now I am bound to a resentful partner. I should have left her. A friend couldn't bear it." "You really have no heart. I took care of the Xiao family for 30 years, pledged so much in my youth, and I toiled hard to raise 2 children all by myself." When he recovered his senses, Xiao Chu looked toward Guiyuan, and memories that involved Luo Qishu flashed through his mind like a revolving lantern. 30 years of marriage. Luo Qishu kept watch over the sprawling Xiao family. The year she became pregnant, the family let him take over the ancestral line. And he left Beijing to travel to the frontier and fight on the battlefield. When he first went to the battlefield, he rose from a foot soldier in the army, thinking of him, worrying for him. Luo Qishu slipped him a lot of money, and even went through the trouble of arranging connections. Yet she never complained to him. She was just busy and bustling with a big pregnant belly, writing to him, "My child and I are waiting for you to come home." But now that he has come home, he has received her divorce papers. Xiao Chu opened that royal pardon document, and suddenly the handwriting on it looked especially grating to the eyes. He couldn't sit still. He rose to grab his sword to cut through this inviolable imperial edict. But Xiao Chu searched all around and couldn't find his favorite Mo sword anywhere in his own room. Where did he put it? Xiao Chu frowned, but suddenly remembered that the sword had been given to him by Luo Qisha. It wouldn't be like the ornaments in the taken by Luo Qisha to be sold, would it? Thinking of this, his heart suddenly sank, as if he had fallen into a pitch-dark cliff. Xiao Chu wouldn't give up and searched the room for an entire afternoon. There was no gain at all, and his heart gradually grew empty, and his mood became blocked. A thought of not finding that sword, "I will not rest," suddenly surged into his mind. Xiao Chu asked the butler, "My moi sword, was it taken away by the old madam?" The butler shook his head. When the old madam left, she didn't take anything from the bamboo courtyard. Xiao Chu frowned. Then it's still in the courtyard, but he just can't find it. With this thought, a sense of powerlessness gradually welled up in his heart. Things in his own courtyard, yet he doesn't know their locations. Send this out and who knows how many people will laugh at him. Xiao Chu asked Xiao Fengye again, but the son didn't know either. "Is it very important? Father, why don't I help you look for it together?" So Xiao Fengye also joined the search team, but even if he turned the bamboo garden over, they still couldn't find that sword. Xiao Chu couldn't say what he was feeling inside, and he wandered to the emptiness of the osmanthus garden on a whim. The ground was covered with ashes left by the fire. with blackened beams piled in a heap all over. Taking 2 steps. The dirty ash rubbed onto the edge of his clothes, making people want to brush it off. Xiao Chu stood there for a while, and finally slowly walked to the edge of the dry well. Looking down, he squinted, and inside there seemed to be clumps of something. Though it wasn't clear what it was, Xiao Chu thought for a moment, then nonchalantly took off his clothes, grabbed the rope and lowered himself down into the well. When he finally lifted the items up, he realized they were a package after package of medicinal patches. He laughed wryly and slammed them heavily onto the ground. The old wound on his wrist crawled back to trouble Xiao Chu at this moment, the stabbing pain making his face turn pale as paper. He could not help but clenched his wrist tightly. There was medicine on the ground clearly. Yet he stubbornly refused to use it, as if his pride mattered more than his body. In the days that followed, Xiao Chu no longer mentioned Luo Qisha at the mansion, but even if he was unwilling to admit it, he himself was incredibly clear that he hoped Luo Qisha would cry and turn back to beg for his forgiveness. On the other side, Zhenzhou. Luo Qisha was strolling around in her family's ceramic shop when the manager led her to the porcelain kiln, letting her witness the firing process of the imperial yellow porcelain firsthand. She also made herself a porcelain bottle. When she had attended banquets at the imperial palace before, she had seen this yellow porcelain and been moved by it, wanting to make and use it together with Xiao Chu. When it was first brought up, Xiao Chu said he didn't have time. The other noblewomen looked at Luo Qisha with a half-smirk, and even the virtuous concubine in the palace teased with a smile. It's just a piece of porcelain. Luo Qisha. General Xiao Chu's hand is for wielding a sword, not for making porcelain. Luo Qisha smiled faintly. At that time it was just a momentary whim on her part. Xiao Chu finally managed to return home for a visit. Of course, without time to bother with those little tasks. I didn't expect that now. It would instead fulfill her wish. She could make as many porcelain pieces as she wanted, as long as she takes the first step. The road ahead seems unbelievably smooth. In the afternoon on his way back to the estate, Luo Qishu spotted an uninvited guest in the courtyard. When Xiao Chu came to see her, she immediately noticed that he looked much more worn and haggard. Although he is 50 this year, he is still a strong and healthy general. How could he look so pale, exhausted, and distressed? Facing each other, it seemed as if half a lifetime had passed. Lu Qisha spoke first. Calm. General Xiao, what brings you here today? Xiao Zhu's voice was a touch husky. Ah, Qi. Where did you leave the sword you bought for me a few years ago? In the general's residence. Lu Qisha was startled for a moment. Which one? For 30 years. She has bought many treasured swords to give to Xiao Chu. She admires his bold, martial spirit as he defends the country. She hopes that with the sword she gave him, he will cut down the enemy's heads. And more than that he will return safely so they can grow old together and watch the sunset on the horizon in their old age. She never expected that at his 50th year, she could no longer walk beside him. Xiao Chu took a long time before saying, "Moe sword." After a moment, his gaze wandered, and he refused to look at Luo Qisha. Can you come with me to the general's mansion to help me find it? As for you writing letters to scold me, I won't hold it against you. Luo Qisha spoke calmly. In the uppermost shelf of the third wardrobe in the right wing of your bamboo courtyard. Xiao Chu evidently did not expect that she would remember so clearly, and his gaze fell on her. Her yard had always been managed by her, and yet she remembered so many details clearly, which showed how attentive she had been. Thank you. Luo Qisha gave a faint hm, and asked, is there anything else? The air seemed to freeze, and with it, Xiao Zhu's heart grew heavy. Clearly the matter was settled, but he didn't want to go back like this. He pulled out an excuse. There are still many things I can't find yet. They're very important. If you don't go back to help me sort them out, I'll be in trouble. Luo Qisha was silent for a moment, realizing that he wanted her to return to the capital. A chill flashed in her eyes. Go find it yourself. Am I your household servant or something? Her indifference drained Xiao Chu's face of color. A trace of resentment sprouted in his heart. 30 years of being old husband and wife. How could asking him to help find something be a problem? What servant? What not a servant? How does finding something become being a servant? Is it really necessary to be so pretentious? As expected, she was still the same arrogant Luo Qixia as before. Seeing Xiao Chu not speak, Luo Qixia tugged at the corner of her mouth. From now on, don't come to me. Have the butler tidy the room. And if you still can't find something, go ask him. This counts as the last of her patience for him. Xiao Zhu took a deep breath, closed his eyes, then opened them again. His eyes stained with a deep dark color. If you don't return to the capital within 7 days, I will empower Mu Yunjin with the rightful title. After finishing speaking, he turned and strode away. Luo Qixia listened to these familiar words, his expression turning a bit strange. Madame Wang steps out from behind at this moment, muttering, "Old general, could you be crazy?" Before he said you must not return for 3 days. He was going to enthrone Mu Yunjin, but up to now there's been no enthronement. Could it be that he wants the madam to go back? Luo Qixia's voice is devoid of warmth. He really wants me to go back. Madame Wang is surprised. Ah, old general, has he changed his temper? Or has he finally reached the age of dementia? Luo Qixia couldn't help but laugh wryly. He's very clear-headed. He loves Mu Yunjin. That's one thing. If the general's household had money, he would surely, without a second word, support Mu Yunjin as mistress. But the problem is, the general's household doesn't have money, so that's why he left me that position, and has been delaying letting Mu Yunjin take charge as the mistress. The world is bustling with people seeking profit, and the world is full of people chasing. 7 days later, Luo Qixu still hadn't heard news of Xiao Chou installing Mu Yunjin as the rightful mistress, but he had given her the authority to manage the general's mansion. They lived in harmony for a while. And Xiao Chou often appeared at capital banquets of all sizes with Mu Yunjin. Xiao Fengye and Mu Jini were both deeply fond of Mu Yunjin. Even their grandson loved Mu Yunjin's gentleness, affectionately calling her grandmother. But the good times did not last long. Mu Yunjin has lived on the frontier for years and basically does not manage the household. Besides, her old eyes are blurred, and she even struggles to read the ledgers. This time, the whole military governor's mansion is in chaos. But Xiao Chu, besides going out daily to drink and spar with old friends, does nothing else. When he returns, he picks at how the meals aren't as good as before and complains that there are fewer servants. Previously I could eat 10 dishes per meal. Now I can only eat 5 dishes. There used to be 5 meat dishes per meal, but now there are only 2 meat dishes, placed on the table. We all don't know which of the 2 dishes to grab. Mu Yunjin inhaled deeply, finally bracing herself to argue with Xiao Chu. Her tone was weary. The storeroom at home is already empty. We can't afford any more extravagance. Xiao Chu was so upset that he finally chose to go out to find an old friend to survive on meals together. His departure made Mu Yunjin fall silent for a moment, but he still forced a smiling mouth. Everyone, continue eating. Mu Jini scooped up a spoonful of chicken soup, smelling the taste he had been savoring for a month. He finally couldn't hold back the fire in his heart. Why can't we just switch to another soup? I'm so nauseated I could puke. And besides, there used to be birds' nest every day, but now there isn't any. How could the cook do things? After that remark, everyone dared not breathe. Where is this blaming the cook? Isn't this blaming Mu Yunjin? Mu Yunjin's face darkened, the corners of her mouth pulling into a hint of a smile. The general's mansion is broke. How about you take care of it? Saying that, she handed over the keys to the storeroom and the accounting room. Mu Jini's eyes lit up, and she snatched the keys from her hand in one grasp. I'll take care of it. At this moment, Luo Qixia is enjoying a table of authentic Zhenzhou delicacies with Wang Mama and the others. Meat dumplings, shrimp dumplings, wine-steamed chicken, lamb hooves and fern, 5-spice vinegar clams, pork bone clear broth, yam soup. While they were eating, there came a knock at the door of the courtyard. Luo Qixia paused with her jade chopsticks, glanced at Xixia, and signaled her to answer the door. Coming here is actually her great eldest son. What is he here for? Although inwardly puzzled, Luo Qisha's expression on the surface did not change at all. Xiao Fengye walked over, mustering his courage and said, "Mother, please come back with me. You don't want your father. You wouldn't even want a biological son, would you?" Luo Qishu said nothing, and Xiao Fengye sat down on the chair that had been vacated by Xixia. Surveying the surroundings, it is said that this house belongs to his mother's clan. It is not some dilapidated old house, but a large mansion, carved beams and painted rafters. One could tell at a glance the luxury of the arrangement. Xiao Fengye sighed and said, "This peach blossom courtyard turned out to be larger than my son imagined. It should occupy 50 mu of land. Since this side of mother's place is so spacious, and since you're not willing to go to the bustling capital, we'll be a little aggrieved and come over to stay with you." Luo Qisha was speechless for a moment. About to speak, Xixia, however, took a step ahead of her and scolded Xiao Fengye with knitted brows. "Master, what are you talking about? Isn't your mother Mu Yunjin?" Everyone silently praised her in their hearts. Xiao Fengye frowned and glared at Xixia. "Who are you calling a little slave? You don't understand any etiquette at all." He looked at Luo Qisha again. "Such a lackey should be sold to the kiln." Hearing this, Luo Qisha set the teacup down with a thud, and her voice carried more dissatisfaction. "Xiao Fengye, she's mine. You have no say here. This courtyard is also mine. If you know what's best, you should leave now, or I'll have the guards throw you out, and you'll be the one who loses face." Xiao Fengye felt quite embarrassed. "Mother, please don't hold this against me anymore. I was wrong before. Please come back with me. If I don't go back soon, the family will fall apart." Luo Qishu raised an eyebrow. "Oh." She waved her hand, stopping the guards from knocking Xiao Fengye unconscious. If Xiao Fengye were to describe the ashen state of the general's mansion, she would really listen closely. It turned out that the butler's matter had a resolution. But Mu Jini had lost time to take care of the child. Although the child has a nurse to look after him, he cannot always just play with the servants. Mu Jini could not rest easy about the child. So Xiao Fengye went to find Mu Yunjin. "Mother, please help us look after the child." He believed that the child born to the virtuous and kind Mu Yunjin would naturally be as intelligent as ice and snow, and Mu Yunjin herself would respond with a benevolent smile. But the truth quickly slapped them in the face. One for each of them. Mu Yunjin had barely taken care of him for less than a day when her little grandson nearly lost half his life. It was noon. While Mu Yunjin was taking a nap, her little grandson and several of Mu Yunjin's grandchildren got into a quarrel. The children are full of energy and fight without holding back. The lone little grandson was naturally beaten by a mob. Fortunately, the grandmas arrived in time and pulled the children apart. Mu Jini looked at the child with a bruised face and blood still coming out of his mouth, and suddenly cried in worry. She burst into Mu Yunjin's room and dragged the old woman up. "Why can't you even take care of a single child? What use do you have?" Mu Yunjin also did not expect it to be so. Hurrying home, Xiao Chu happened to catch this scene. He immediately pushed Mu Jini aside, worry clouding his expression as he looked at Mu Yunjin. "Ayun, are you all right?" This push was not light. Mu Jini staggered a few steps trying to stand firmly, but still fell to the ground. Mu Yunjin shook her head and was about to help Mu Jini up. But Mu Jini lay on the ground, pale, trembling. "What's wrong with you?" Everyone hurriedly gathered around, only to find a large pool of blood beneath her. Mu Jini had miscarried. That night she stated that the matter of the housekeeper should be handled by others, and they should think of another solution. She would not leave the Xiao family. Her benevolence and righteousness had long been exhausted. Xiao Zhu wasn't unaware of the idea that the children of Mu Yunjin might manage the household. But they had all grown up on the frontier and had no experience dealing with the nobles in the capital at all. So he brought a pile of gifts to his daughter-in-law to apologize, and sent Xiao Fengye to persuade Mu Jini. Father was momentarily heavy-handed. "This time is an accident and will never happen again." Mu Jini was terribly disappointed. Originally, Aunt Bao's mother-in-law, Mu Yunjin, lived most of her life without managing the household, and father-in-law could only complain. She alone was willing to take on the role of housekeeper. which was already quite good. But the child she bore never had a chance to be born because of these trivialities. She found it hard not to resent, detest, or hate the Xiao family. That night, Mu Jini returned to her parents' home with the child. Xiao Fengye was stuck in the middle, torn between the two sides. In the end, he went to find Mu Jini. "What should I say for you to come back with me?" Mu Jini spoke coldly. "I won't come back with you. And I won't look after the house. You deal with it yourselves." Xiao Fengye frowned. "My mother has lived like this for so many years. You know my father didn't do it on purpose. He's getting old. What is there for you to quarrel with him about? You don't run the household. So why can't you go learn?" These words were like pouring oil on the fire. And Mu Jini's voice rose several pitches. "Then you should go to your mother." Xiao Fengye's expression flashed with a hint of impatience. "The general's mansion cannot be managed by my mother's housekeeper forever. Sooner or later it will fall into your hands." Mu Jini snorted coldly. "After all that, you only can't bear to have your mother come back. But now your general's mansion is so poor that not only your mother doesn't want to return, even I don't want to come back." Xiao Fengye felt that she was unreasonable. Frowning, he turned and left with his sleeves brushed. Boom! A spring thunderclap split the night as Xiao Fengye went to the Eastern Palace during the Hour of the Tiger. He wanted to find Xiao Lihua to discuss something, to borrow money, but things did not go as he had expected. He was met with a closed door. He certainly refused to back down and forced his way into the Eastern Palace. A leaf that seemed to have fallen from nowhere landed precisely on his hand, stopping his forceful push at the palace gate. Xiao Fengye stepped back quickly and avoided injury. Even so, he looked quite embarrassed. A familiar female voice rang from above. "Big brother, I didn't really mean to hurt you. I just want you to know when to back down. I'm already married. How can I use the crown prince's money to fill my maternal family's gaps?" Xiao Fengye raised his head to look at Xiao Lihua sitting on the eaves, his mouth corners twitching. He finally understood why the crown prince disliked his younger sister. He paused for a moment and spoke seriously. "I came to borrow money from you." "Not from the Eastern Palace to borrow money," Xiao Lihua broke in. "I won't give the general's mansion even 100 taels. Even 100 taels is 100 taels." Xiao Fengye replied with a sound of acknowledgement, only then realizing what she had said. "Are you really my sister?" He looked at her with suspicion, and after a moment said, "Who are you mad at? That you won't even give me 100 taels?" "Naturally. At our mother." Speaking of Luo Qisha, Xiao Lihua became fired up, with a hint of anger on her face. "She didn't care one bit about my future at all. Getting a divorce, really, is just too cold-hearted. And you and father, two grown men, actually couldn't watch over an old woman. You're really useless." After speaking, she snorted softly, then flew down from the eaves and returned inside the Eastern Palace. Xiao Fengye already felt that his sister was truly a bit willful, and he was more upset at his own incompetence. He roughly estimated the possibility of robbing his sister-in-law's fortune by force in the Imperial Palace, if he trained a few more light skills. Sneaking money as a flying thief on the beam wouldn't be a problem. But if he forced his way in now, tomorrow there would be rumors about him across the capital. Prince Xiao forcibly barges into the East Palace to seize wealth and is dragged to the capital jail. Sentenced to 3 years in prison. Forget it. A hero doesn't eat the immediate loss. Xiao Fengye awkwardly turned and headed toward the general's mansion. If there's no butler to look after things, then he will. Thoughts gradually returned. Luo Qishu unknowingly drank a cup of ginseng tea, then looked up at him. Xiao Fengye touched his nose. "But you know, my son has classes at the Imperial Academy during the day. And only at night can he return to the general's mansion to look at the ledgers. It's really troublesome. It almost exhausted him to death. He wakes up earlier than a chicken and sleeps later than a cat." He finally understood the fatigue of a tired butler who also has to handle family disputes. A mother raised him and his sister alone, and she had to keep spending money to support their father on the frontier. Yet no one understood her. "Mother, can you come back?" Lu Qisha naturally saw the expectation in his eyes. She tightened her fingers around the teacup. closed her eyes, and felt an indescribable exhaustion in her heart. Why do children never seem to grow up at their age? In addition to being a housekeeper, she also held thick books. Bowing her head to study the 4 books and 5 classics page by page, to help check Xiafengji's homework. It's just that the child grows up so fast that she doesn't have time to learn so much. And gradually, she loses the common language with them. Luo Qishu watched the setting sun fall beyond the bamboo window, and softly replied to her son, "That is not my home. I will not go back. Also, if you and Mu Genie want to learn to be stewards, you must first learn to read the accounts. You can ask the bookkeeper for guidance on this. The network of contacts in the capital must also be maintained. Go to Li Mama, who is close to your father. She knows many of the officials' families and preferences. Please, you must take notes with paper and pen." She paused for a moment, then continued. "Then have someone check whether it's true. After all, Nanny Li is old. She might have misremembered, word by word." It could be considered her last tenderness toward her son. Xiao Fengye's eyes flashed with a hint of guilt and emotion, as if he knew his father had wronged his mother. He cleared his throat and slowed his pace. "Mother, if you are still angry that father took a concubine, I can have someone drive Aunt Mu back to the border or to Mu family." Luo Qisha's heart was slightly surprised. Was this sudden conscience coming to stand on her side, or just pretending to please her? But no matter which, it could not change her heart. "No need. Don't come looking for me again in the future. I have left the general's mansion. I am no longer your mother, and I don't have a son like you." After she finished speaking, she waved her hand, and several guards immediately rushed over to throw Xiao Fengye out of the courtyard. At the moment the gate to the courtyard closed, Luo Qisha clearly saw Xiao Fengye's pale face, as if she couldn't believe she would throw her own son out of the door. Doing such a thing to a child she had raised for decades makes people feel sad and helpless. Luo Qisha can no longer recall when Xiao Fengye drifted away from her. From the moment he was born, he had received all the love from her and the Xiao family. Not even Xiao Lihua favored him. Xiao Zhu's mother, fearing that this lone seedling would repeat the misfortunes of generations past in the general's residence, spent a fortune to invite a renowned scholar of the era to impart his philosophy to him. That great scholar said, "At any time, you must put yourself first." Xiao Zhu's mother originally meant that after Xiao Fengye goes to the battlefield, he should not rush forward to sacrifice himself. Who would have thought that? Now, Xiao Fengye has become a complete and utter selfish person. He could apologize to her in the most natural tone, and then drive away Mu Yunzheng, whom he once liked, from the mansion. After Xiao Fengye left, Luo Qisha had no mood to dine. She instructed Wang Mama and the others to eat by themselves, then walked out of the room. Strolling along the bustling streets. It is spring. The cries of street vendors selling goods on the main street continually reached her ears. Lu Qishu was walking down the street, looking at eggs, when she heard people gossiping at a tea stall. "Have you heard? That General Xiao in the capital, nearly 80, yet married a beautiful young wife." "What beautiful young wife? You've got it wrong. It's an old woman. That old woman was originally the person General Xiao liked when he was young. It's just that their families weren't a match, so they parted ways." In the idle chatter of the common people, they also, if Mu Yunzhen is indeed 3 years older than General Xiao, then she must have married into a family. General Xiao originally had an original wife as well. Only I feel sorry for the general who has served his mother-in-law for more than 20 years, who raised his sons and daughters alone, the original wife. Luo Qishu smiled. She doesn't mind whether anyone cares for her. After all, she is already old. What is there to fuss about? When she first married Xiao Chu, she didn't know he couldn't let go of Mu Yunzhen. If she had known, she would have let go long ago, and wouldn't have wasted half her life. Later, her father-in-law and mother-in-law fell ill. The man was near death, struck by a stroke and paralyzed in bed. At that time, Luo Qishu was going through the toughest period, because her daughter suddenly had a seizure and insisted on marrying the crown prince. Since she was to marry the crown prince, Her dowry had to be substantial enough. Her dowry was emptied to fund half of her dowry, and further drained again to pay for her in-laws' medical bills. Luo Qishu takes care of this one, then takes care of that one. Back at Guiyuan, seeing the cold and quiet house, she had thought countless times that it would be better to die. If she is this useless, what is the meaning of living? After tending to the young, she tends to the old. After tending to the old, she tends to the young. It took a lot of effort to get rid of the mother-in-law. The son and daughter-in-law gave birth to a grandson. Luo Qishu thought this was also a joyous occasion, and then instructed the servants to send Mu Genie a great amount of satin and silk. She even took off the Xia family's ancestral emerald bangle and had Mu Genie wear it. This bangle has been passed down 9 generations in the Xia family. To you, it becomes the 10th generation. 10th generation. Because it should be flawless in every way. Mu Jingyi smiled warmly, thanked them, then turned around and whispered to the servant, sending something so rustic. Luo Qishu, who is skilled in martial arts, with keen ears and eyes, heard those words. She isn't angry, it's just that she naturally feels uneasy in her heart. She feels like she's earnestly trying to please her daughter-in-law, but she doesn't appreciate it. But on second thought, young people are like that, saying whatever they want, a little stupid and straightforward, which is quite common. Luo Qishu immediately envies their carefree abandon. When she regained her senses, Lu Qisha unknowingly walked back to the peach blossom courtyard. Zixia, upon seeing her, came forward to help. Lu Qisha seemed to casually ask, "I heard Mu Genie went back to her mother's house." Zixia paused, then nodded. "Seems so." Lu Qishu sighed. "Compared to her, I'm really pathetic. Stuck in a suppressive, indifferent, and wasting life at the general's mansion until I'm 45. Zixia was surprised again. How could that be? The master is so brave, able to flee the general's mansion in pursuit of freedom. Zixia admires that very much. Luo Qishua shook her head and smiled. It's not like that. She's not yearning for freedom. At her age, what freedom could she want? She's not in love with the outside world, and she's not from her natal family anymore after all. Her mother is already dead. It's just that she knew she was going to die soon. So she thought of escaping. Zixia comforted her for a while, and then told Luo Qisha the recent interesting events that happened in Zhengzhou. She listened quietly. Being with young people, she always felt it easy to relax. Zhengzhou's business entered a trough in April because it rained for many days, and few people went out shopping. The illness that took root in Luo Qisha long ago flared up again on this rainy day, and her legs constantly throbbed. After 2 days of seeing a doctor, she joined the caravan and decided to trade Zybe goods in a foreign land, leaving behind the persistent drizzle in Zhengzhou, and perhaps to see landscapes she had never seen in her youth. Heading south all the way, under drifting clouds and evening rain, the rivers and mountains stretched under a vast blue sky. Along the way, caravans carried goods into their group, and by the time they reached the foreign lands, the caravans had grown so large that outsiders felt as if they were bringing an army with them. Dust and sand fill the sky as the caravan advances grandly, traveling farther and farther. If it were only a single caravan, perhaps they wouldn't dare. But now there are thousands of caravans, and everyone is relaxed. The fierce sun hangs in the sky, and a plant, green and spiked, rises from the desert, one stalk at a time. A worldly wise merchant said, "This is an immortal slap." Lu Qishu found it strange and couldn't help but pull out a tukanlong to collect. In addition, she also witnessed mirages that seemed like miracles. She saw black people. She saw many things that many people of the Great Xia couldn't come into contact with. In her previous understanding, there was no reason for a woman to travel far, and even less for a woman to go abroad, let alone she was an old woman. After camping in the desert, everyone tied their camels to an unknown tree. Zixia walked over and handed Luo Qishu a piece of cake and a burnt lamb skewer. "Master, eat a little." Luo Qisha took it. For days of wind and sand had tanned her skin slightly brown, while her gaze softly looked toward the distance. As she ate, A few Arab merchants and traders at the back began to murmur quietly. How dare that old woman come from Zhongyu and Zhenzhou to here? At her age. Isn't she afraid her bones will crumble? You don't know this. She's not an ordinary person. The one from the general's residence. Luo Qisha quietly nibbled on the biscuit, listening to their gossip. Hushang grasped the meaning. Abandoned wife. Xia's face suddenly turned cold, about to go over to spar with words. But Luo Qisha blocked her. Other merchants who came from Zhenzhou started chattering again about him. You really dare to say that? I wouldn't even dare to listen. I've heard about it. That old woman is a relative of the Holy One. Upon hearing this, one of them immediately echoed. Actually, I've wanted to say it for a long time. The Holy One still intends to bring that old woman into the palace as a concubine. Everyone suddenly began to cough. The merchant was stunned for a moment, turned around, and suddenly saw Luo Qisha standing in front of them. A faint smile on her face. Empress. Who is that? A few giggles rippled around. The merchant's face reddened at once, and he stammered, unable to utter a complete sentence. I. Luo Qisha smiled softly. I don't believe His Majesty will make you a concubine. Everyone burst into loud laughter. The merchant's face flushed with anger as his defenses cracked. And he stood up and ran away. Only then did people realize that Luo Qisha was tall and noble-looking throughout. Her facial features were bright and glamorous, rich and alluring. Even at 45, she seemed no more than 30. If she wore even less makeup, she would surely look even better. The merchants suddenly understood the emperor's idea of bringing her into the inner palace, keeping her in a gilded mansion. The sands glittered in the sky, and a desolate cry rang out in vain. Everyone's heart sank, and they looked over in a flash. The merchant who had just run away had fallen into the sand and stones, crying for help, amidst the blinding wind and dust. The two figures charged forward without hesitation, and painfully pulled him out. After cleaning up the people, all the sand stuck to Luo Qishu's clothes. The merchant, barely escaping with his life, tearfully thanked the two of them. The sun shone on Jin high, and the crowd regained their lively atmosphere. Everyone laughed at Luo Qishu. Who would have thought? At such an advanced age, you still have such skill and strength. Luo Qisha also laughed. Thank you for the compliment. Before she officially entered the household, she was also a woman who could wield knives and guns. She loved all things grand and dramatic. But later, after she married Xiao Chu, she lost even her own freedom. And gradually she didn't enjoy playing with guns as much. The final stretch of the road. Luo Qisha and the merchants walked for another month. They traded in an unknown land, exchanging tea and porcelain for many treasures, colorful gems, fruits and spices. On the return journey, Luo Qisha and the others encountered dust storms and dust devils again. Fortunately, they found a cave to hide in. When the wind stops, they move forward step by step in the endless yellow sand. Master, Xia is both surprised and delighted. We've arrived. Luo Qisha lifts her veil and looks up. The sky is a clear blue, and the towering city walls rise from the ground. Red banners flapping in the air. Zhenzhou. Luo Qisha regained her senses and continued walking forward. Xia, although I haven't returned for 7 months, it feels as if it were only yesterday. Xia nodded and added. Zhenzhou hasn't changed much, but the local situation hasn't changed much. While some people's attitudes have shifted, when Luo Qishu first arrived in Zhenzhou, the housekeeper came to report that Xiao Chu had sent her 200 letters in 7 months. She felt somewhat perplexed, and at the same time found it a little ridiculous. In the 30 years they had known each other, the number of letters Xiao Chu sent home was few and far between. He hadn't seen her for just half a year. Yet he wrote to her every now and then as if nothing had happened. Luo Qisha fixed him with a cold gaze, a spark of anger flashing in his dark eyes. In the letter in his hand, all he talked about was how something in the family had gone wrong, how his old wound had resurfaced, but he couldn't find the ointment she used to prepare for him, and Xiao Fengye had gotten into a fight with the son of secretary of the court. Shi Shangshu. He asked her what Shi Shangshu's preferences were, so he could apologize properly. Is this the tablet used for recording her as an official? Lu Qisha did not want to pay attention, ordered the servant to burn the letters, and forbade receiving Xiao Zhu's letters from now on. Zixia butted in. Master, why not keep the letter? When Mu Yunjin has her birthday later, we can send it to her as a birthday gift. Zixia was in full swing speaking, while Lu Qisha was just about to refuse her. Idle. There is a knock at the door behind me. When the door opens, Xiaolihua stands at the doorway with a grim expression. Seeing Luo Qisha, the furrowed brows loosen, and she wears a half-smile, like a Buddha statue in a temple. Mother, you finally let me wait for you. Lu Qishi paused and asked coldly, what do you want me for? Xiaolihua was silent for a moment. Mother, you have darkened. Lu Qishi remained unmoved. Don't change the subject. Xiaolihua spoke candidly. I am here to take you back. Lu Qishu called her by full name. Xiaolihua, I told you last time. Please respect my choice. Pushing away your father is something the emperor has agreed to as well. So please stop interfering with my life. Zixia glanced at Xiaolihua, muttering softly on the side. Some people just can't remember what you say. Their heads have grown a pair of ornaments on both sides. Xiaolihua did not get angry, but laughed instead. She turned to the side, lowered her eyes. Since my mother is unwilling to go, I have no choice but to have someone lay hands on my mother. Luo Qisha did not expect that Xiaolihua was not disguising her travel, but was grandly bringing a bunch of people along. The prince concubine forcibly invited her mother onto the golden bronze eaves and headed straight for the capital. They naturally refused to obey, angrily mounting their horses to follow behind. And the prince's consort's guards actually didn't drive them away. In the streets and lanes, idle commoners gathered to the side, curiously peeking through. They could only see a young woman vaguely seated behind a bead curtain, with a middle-aged beauty beside her. So imposing. Xiaolihua replied with a sly smile. Mother can see that only power and status can make people revere you. Luo Qisha gave her a glance, then closed her eyes to ease her mind and calm herself. She fears she cannot help lecturing Xiaolihua, insisting that she should not be so extravagant. After all, she carried the baby for 10 months and personally cherished the child. Ahua, who is 1 year old, never lets anyone hold her and cries loudly at being picked up. But the moment Luo Qishu holds her, she stops crying instantly. Even Xiaozhi's mother says, what a stubborn child. Determined to trust someone. Xiaolihua grows up to be especially determined and opinionated. People say women must be gentle and virtuous, but I refuse to. People say the East Palace is a dragon's pool and tiger's den, but I insist on entering. Luo Qishu came to her senses. Couldn't help rubbing her temples. Xiaolihua, seeing this, coldly tossed the scented furnace out of the carriage. Luo Qishu was startled. Halt, wait. There was indeed a dull sound outside the carriage, like copper clashing with a person. But when Luo Qisha looked outside, she only saw a commoner holding a censer, his eyes wide with awe. Thank you, Your Highness Consort, for your gracious reward. That censer is inlaid with gold and jade. It's a precious item that ordinary people could never obtain in their lifetimes. Xiaolihou's soft voice echoed inside the carriage. Luo Qisha suddenly turned his head, frowning. Then you can't just throw things around either. What if you hit someone to death? Xiaolihua looked unhappy, and subconsciously wanted to leverage her status as the crown prince consort to get her way. But thinking of something, she held her temper. Understood. Luo Qisha sighed, closed her eyes to regain her composure. When she opened her eyes again, they had already arrived in the capital. The carriage and horse were parked at the gate of the general's residence. Xiao Chu wearing a purple official robe, accompanied by Mu Yunjin, and also with Xiao Fengye standing at the gate of the general's residence. Luo Qisha swept a glance, feeling that everyone looked much more wan, especially Xiao Chu. His eyes were rimmed with black, as if he had not slept all night. Seeing her, he strode forward, extending his hand to help her down from the sedan chair. Luo Qishu dodged, a trace of coldness flashing in her eyes. Did you tell Ahua to bring me back bound here? Xiao Chu was momentarily pierced by her indifferent gaze, pursed his lips and said, no, but I gave my implicit consent. Ah, Qi, the general's mansion can't be without you. And I can't be without you either. Luo Qishu's eyes were as calm as water, her tone serene. Didn't you manage well on the frontier all those decades without me? The scene fell silent for a moment. No sooner had Xiao Chou said something than Xiao Fengye spoke first. Mother, since you've returned, stay at the residence. Your son misses you very much. The sudden words froze Luo Qishu for a moment. She looked at Xiao Fengye's face, only to see that face, similar to Xiao Chou, with blue and purple shadows crisscrossing, as if someone had beaten him. Xiao Fengye finished saying that, and didn't speak again, only stared at her eagerly. Luo Qisha asked softly, was it the son of Minister Shi who did it? Xiao Fengye's eyes brightened. Then he drooped his head in a pitiful, reluctant nod. Exactly. He slandered his father for loving the new and despising the old. Luo Qisha listened quietly to him, without saying a word. If it were in the past, she would have felt heartache and then stood up for him to seek justice. But now, she really wants to praise Minister Shi for teaching his son so well. Xiao Fengye spoke to himself for a long time, and when he saw Luo Qishu had no reaction, he awkwardly stopped. Actually, since entering the Guizi Senior Academy, he has rarely suffered grievances and has rarely acted spoiled toward Luo Qishu. Lu Qiushu's indifferent attitude left him feeling stifled inside, but he could find nothing wrong with her indifference. Xiao Chu's face looked unnatural as he glanced at Luo Qishu. Let's go in and talk. There were already a number of people gathered in front of the general's residence, wanting to watch the show. Luo Qisha stood still without moving. Xiao Chu's voice was a little higher. Qi. Luo Qisha's gaze swept over Xiao Chu, then landed on the faces of the civilians on one side. Xiao Chu, you were the one who wronged me first. In these 30 years, you lied to and concealed things from me, and I never thought of taking revenge on you. But you are greedy and selfish, coveting my wealth. If you insist on it like this, I don't mind paying a visit to the Beijing Yamen once. At my age. After finishing speaking, she ignored the various looks from the crowd and turned to leave. Xiao Chu, however, grabbed her hand and spoke in a low, deferential voice. I don't want your money. I just want our family to be together. Intact. Family. The word struck Luo Qishu's heart, only stirring a wave of sarcasm. She turned around and spoke calmly. I don't have you all, but I'll be better off. Isn't that so? Xiao Chu's expression stiffened, and emotions surged in his eyes. He couldn't articulate the tangled mix of feelings in his heart, but he knew Luo Qishu was right. Seeing Luo Qishu's sunbeaten face again, Xiao Chu wanted to speak but stopped. All because of us. We drove you away. You're the one who hid from us in the hot climate desert for 7 months. Luo Shusho said coldly. It's not because of you. Xiao Chu's eyes still looked at her with pity. I know. Usually when people stare at her while she talks, it's because they fundamentally don't trust her. Lu Qishu found it really ear-splitting and took a deep breath. Have you ever had 7 months of fake leave? Everyone's faces suddenly froze. Especially Xiao Chu. Lu Qishu fixed him with a calm gaze and said softly. Don't say 7 months. You are in officials in the court. Besides mourning your father and mother, have you ever had a vacation longer than 7 days? 7 days are enough to not worry about politics, to travel around and enjoy the scenery. And Yumu Yunjin. Throughout the 4 seasons, it's either giving birth or raising children. Right. Do you ever take a day off? The crowd broke their defenses. Don't say any more. Mu Yunjin's eyes reddened, and she pinched her handkerchief to wipe her eyes. For the general, I volunteer. Her voice trembled. The rest of the not resting words simply couldn't be squeezed out of her throat. Xiao Chu closed his eyes. After a long moment of calm, he spoke to Luo Qisha. Even if you have wealth by your side, what if one day you grow old? Who will take care of you in your old age? Luo Qisha replied calmly. I have servants. I have friends. Xiao Chu added again. But none of them are as dear as your own children. This world is like this. If an elder has no children around, no one will notice when they die. Luo Qisha quietly looked at him. Some unfilial children might poison medicine to plot to seize the family fortune when a person is gravely ill. She turned her head slightly. Her eyes like cold blades stabbing into the hearts of Xiao Fengye and Xiao Lihua. The Xiao family members did not stop Luo Qisha again. They just wore expressions without a smile. Xiao Lihua shot Mu Yunjin a meaningful look. Then she also turned and left the Xiao family. The rest of them quietly entered the mansion, sat down in the main hall, and stared blankly at a table of delicacies from mountains and seas. This table's dishes are signature dishes they specially bought from Yipin Lu, originally to celebrate Luo Qishu's homecoming. Xiao Fengye picked up the chopsticks and broke the quiet atmosphere. In the capital city, there is a hot dish called fried shrimp balls. Eat it slowly, or you'll scald yourself. But because the exterior is crispy and the inside soft, with springy shrimp filling in the middle. One piece is 10 taels of silver. Please taste it and see. The servant finished setting the dishes. But Xiao Chu did not reach for the chopsticks. Mu Yunjin fears Xiao Fengye's awkwardness. Picks up a shrimp ball, blows it to cool, then puts it in her mouth. With a bite, a stabbing pain erupted at her clenched teeth. Mu Yunjin frowned, feeling as if she were biting a piece of stone, until the taste of rust spread to her tongue. She covered her mouth with a cloth and coughed, discovering it was a tooth. For a moment, Mu Yunjin's complexion alternated between green and white. Xiao Fengye paused with the action of picking up vegetables, his expression complex as he looked at her. Xiao Chu suddenly stood up, leaving only a single sentence. Knowing I'm old and have poor teeth, I still want to be this embarrassing. Mu Yunjin felt a chill run through her body upon hearing it. Is he starting to despise her for aging and losing her beauty? Dusk time. Lu Qisha returns from the general's residence to the courtyard she rents in the capital. The courtyard is a blue-tiled house, just a street away from the capital's busiest marketplace. It was also the smallest mansion she had lived in. If it were any smaller, even the entourage she brought would probably have to stay at an inn. The entire set of new decorations had already been moved into the new home by the servants, originally newly moved in. Everyone was supposed to greet Luo Qisha at the gate and light firecrackers to add some festive atmosphere. However, now the courtyard gate was utterly silent. Lu Qisha stood in the main hall, her gaze calm as she watched a man in a black phoenix robe sitting on a sandalwood chair, pouring wine for himself, as if the night cold was the master of this home. Present yourself to His Majesty. Yi Hanqing took a slow, unhurried sip of tea, then signaled softly, sit, this is your own home. A touch of helplessness flashed in Lu Qisha's eyes, and she thought. So he knew this was her home. She didn't want to dwell on the emperor's willful intrusions into civilian homes and walked to the bottom right of the dark night to sit down. Your Majesty, what business brings you here? Yi Hanqing put down the teacup, raising her eyes to look at her. I heard you were tied back to the capital by the crown prince consort. I've come to see whether to back you up. Luo Qisha fell silent for a moment, not really requiring the emperor. The general's household affairs haven't reached a point where His Majesty needs to step in. Yi Hanqing looked at her gravely. Actually, Xiao Lihua and you are very similar. Luo Qisha was taken aback, then smiled softly, her tone gentle yet firm. I am not like her. Yi Hanqing would not let it go. No, she is very much like you. The crown prince doesn't like assertive Ah Hua, but Ah Hua insists on marrying him. Xiao Zhu does not like you. Yet you would rather reject the wedding invitation I sent and marry him. You and your mother are both hopelessly infatuated. But your eyes aren't in good shape. Not surprising either since that child was raised by you yourself. Of course they've inherited your stubbornness. This speech cuts like a sharp icicle, suddenly piercing the heart. Let Luo Qishu have a moment of being unable to resist. But the line in his words, refuse the wedding invitation I send you, dragged her out of the embarrassment by force. What wedding invitation? How could she have known? In the wedding invitation her mother sent years ago, there was no request for marriage from Yi Hanqing. Lo Qi, she felt a jolt in her heart, but kept it from showing on her face. In a daze, Yi Hanqin stood up. The day after tomorrow is the winter solstice. There will be a banquet at the imperial palace. He glanced at her, his voice steady. Whether you come or not depends on you. Lo Qi, she did not hesitate either. Go. Why wouldn't I go? She has already separated from Xiao Chu. No longer the old madam trapped in the mansion. But Luo Qishu, since there is free time, she intends to recover all of the self she had abandoned before. If there is a banquet, she will not skip it. That is not her nature. Yi Han tilted the corner of her mouth slightly upward. Luo Qisha suspected she was having an illusion. And what was your majesty laughing at? When she looked again, that smile had disappeared again. Yi Hanqing still kept his rigid and proper posture. He didn't say anything more and strode toward the door. Aunt Wang, who had been standing by, sighed heavily. In her view, Yi Hanqing and Xiao Chu were not the same. If it were Xiao Chu, she would only casually throw down an invitation and then, as a matter of course, command Luo Qisha to attend the banquet, without room for objection. Yet Yi Hanyong bends himself to be emperor, leaving the choice to Luo Qisha. Your Majesty, you truly live up to your title. Your vision is grand, and your attitude toward your subjects is gentle. While she was still savoring the moment, Luo Qisha's voice sounded in her ear. Mama Wang, you are the elder I brought out from the Luo family. Do you know that your Majesty once sent me a betrothal notice? Mama Wang frowned and thought for a moment. Not yet. Luo Qisha also did not dwell on it at this moment, and waved her hand for everyone to go down and do their tasks. After a trip to the foreign country, she always felt a bit fatigued. So she simply sat by the couch and folded her clothes one by one. These clothes are all the ones she brought out from the general's residence. They were bought by herself as well. Xiao Chu only bought her a new outfit once when she was young, and after that, she never bought her any new clothes again. But now that they are separated anyway, she no longer concerns herself with these things. After folding the clothes, Luo Qishu leaned against them and drifted into a heavy sleep, probably because she had seen Xiao Chu in the daytime. She dreamt of the time when she had just married Xiao Chu. A good day. A joyous red dragon and phoenix candle swayed inside the room. Luo Qishu could not withstand the phoenix light shining over her head, and in the end she gritted her teeth and did not remove it, choosing to lie flat on the couch. This way you won't ache your neck. But the brocade quilt was too soft, and she drifted off without realizing it. When Xiao Chu tucked the quilt over her, she woke up. There was also a faint scent of roasted chicken in the air, making the hungry mouth water. The seventh beauty's eyes flickered. General. Xiao Chu neither wore cold, frostbitten armor nor wore bright red clothes. He only wore an undergarment. The white light softens the stern air in his expression, faintly revealing the blemish-free and untainted aura of a banished immortal. I brought you roasted chicken. Luo Qisha's gaze rested on the golden, crackling roasted chicken on the table, and thus he overlooked the calm, unmoved look in Xiao Chu's eyes. Not at all like looking at a wife, but more like looking at a colleague, and the meals he sent were merely official business. Luo Qishu opened her eyes again and found herself lying on the bed. The sky outside the window had already grown dim. Aunt Wang Mama sat by the edge of the bed watching over her, and sighed when she saw she had woken. Master is tired. That's why sleeps so deeply. Luo Qisha slowly sat up, then smiled and said, I had wanted to stroll in the capital, but just lying on the bed made it impossible to keep my eyes open. Granny, I dreamed of the past. It was the day I married Xiao Chu. But sadly there is no regret medicine in this world. Otherwise I would surely not have married him. Grandma Wang hesitated before saying, if the old general hadn't kept concubines outside, he would truly be a good man. How could a handsome and tall military lord's legitimate son not be considered a good man? She fell silent for a few seconds, looking at her. Nanny, why are you speaking for Xiao Zhu today? Madame Wang clasped her hands tightly, a look of trepidation on her face. Today the master asked about the marriage contract for this old servant. In the afternoon, during my idle time, I went to inquire about the housekeeper who once served the Luo family. Although the housekeeper was already elderly, after taking the pension money given by the Luo family, she left the mansion and came to the capital to live. Luo Qixia did not understand what she meant. Aunt Wang Ji clenched her hands, then continued. Your mother once concealed from you the marriage contract that your majesty sent. Luo Qixia was startled. Madame Wang hurriedly said. Actually, Madame Luo is also doing this for your own good. She does not wish to leverage her daughter's marriage to gain from the powerful. She only hopes that your husband will be with you for a lifetime. Two people as one. It was also during the time Madame Luo was choosing her daughter's husband that the Xiao family came knocking at the door. The Xiao family said their son would be willing to marry only Luo Qixia alone. Madame Luo initially did not want to agree, but Lady Xiao added, "Dead. Why don't the two families go to petition His Majesty for a marriage, grant a noble match, and put Lady Luo at ease as well?" Lady Luo pondered a moment. The Xiao family is a martial noble family. Xiao Chu will go to the battlefield from now on. And Luo Qixia's marriage would save her from serving her husband in that household. Most importantly, Luo Qixia could hold the entire general's mansion in her hands. Controlling the mansion's business in the capital, she could enjoy a lifetime of wealth and honor without contending with her concubines for the lord's affection. If one joins the royal household, it would be absolutely impossible to be like this. Luo Qixia lowered her eyes slightly, stroking the gilded agate bracelet on her wrist. It's just a pity that my mother didn't foresee that the Xiao family is so poor. All her abundant dowries were almost all used to subsidize the Xiao family, and Xiao Chu used the money she had earned all these years to support his concubines. 3 days flew by in the blink of an eye. And Xiao Chu came to look for her during that period, but was stopped by people at the courtyard gate. The sun was just right. Luo Qixia left the courtyard, got into the carriage, and headed for the imperial palace. Along the way, the vendors outside the cars were clamoring non-stop. Today is the winter solstice. Sweet tangled glutinous rice balls and meat-filled dumplings are for sale. Only 10 won. Entering the palace, Luo Qixia realized that many officials and noble families had already arrived. Several ladies who knew her smiled, drew near, and engaged her in conversation, going on about this and that. It finally got onto Mu Yunjin's matter tut. I've heard that the downstairs someone is snooping around. Mu Yunjin has been sending people to the medical clinic and the cosmetics shop recently. She's already that old. Surely she isn't thinking about dressing up, is she? She's not trying to dress up. She's trying to hide the wrinkles on her face. It is said that she is old and past her prime, and the old general has already started to dislike her. Luo Qixia listened quietly to their chatter, feeling half surprised and half not. As night falls, the slanting shadows grow longer. Everyone chatted casually as they entered the celebration hall. Luo Qixia casually chose a seat, and after glancing up at Xiao Chu in purple official robes opposite her seemed to sense something. Their eyes meeting. Your Majesty has arrived. A sharp, slender voice rang out. Luo Qixia respectfully stood up with everyone to bow. Yi Hanqing walked over, paused in front of her, then continued to ascend to the head seat. After he finished a string of superficial remarks, the crowd was allowed to return to their seats. The drums and music rose in harmony as the palace maids carried in melons and fruits one after another. Luo Qixia had just taken a sip of plum wine and slightly frowned. Yi Hanqing's gaze happened to sweep over her, and he smiled. Is there something wrong with the wine? Luo Qixia found it hard to say outright that the wine was sour and bitter. Choosing it for a royal palace banquet was really a misstep. She only replied, "It's because I, Qi, am not good at drinking." Yi Hanqing fixed his eyes on her and spoke softly. This wine is made from plums from your homeland. Although it's bitter, it's not bad to have a try. After finishing speaking, he moved to chat idly with another official. Luo Qixu smiled and continued tasting the dishes. On the other side, Xiao Chu fixed his gaze on the two of them, his face alternately dark blue and deathly pale. In just 2 sentences, he could conclude that the two were old acquaintances. Understanding this, a surge of waves roared within Xiao Chu's heart. and a chill rushed straight to the crown of his head. He suddenly understood why the emperor had promised to accept Luo Qisha's divorce. It turned out they had long harbored a private affair. Beside him, the official looked puzzled. "Old general, I called you several times just now. Why did you not respond?" Xiao Chu gritted his teeth and sneered. "It's a good show being staged." The officials were more puzzled, glancing around but not seeing anything. Instead, they caught a glimpse of Xiao Chu's ex-wife getting up from her seat, and then the emperor said he wanted to go out for some air. When he turned his head, he found that Xiao Chu's seat was also empty, and the person had already reached the door. When Xiao Zhu followed into the backyard, she saw Yi Hanqing standing with his hands behind his back by the lakeside, while Luo Qisha was washing her hands at the shore. What were the two of them doing? Xiao Chu's first thought was that, and then it was quickly swept away by reason. They're old. What could they do? The two people's conversation fell into his ears intermittently. Yi Hanqing asked, "Do you want to leave the money to your ex-husband, who has someone in his heart? Or do you prefer the child of that person more?" Luo Qisha spoke lightly. "Neither. I've spent more money on the Xiao family than on myself. The in-laws and the child can be dismissed. But what about others? Why should I bear the burden to support them as well? I have already reached my limit with them. If they come to me again, I might consider buying a killer to take them down." Yi Hanqing smirked. "This is the Luo Qishu I know." Xiao Chu hid behind the fake mountain and kept a close watch on them. At this moment, the care at the banquet, Yi Hanqing's familiar words, and Luo Qishu's resolve to oppose the general's mansion all threaded together in his mind. His uncontrollably came out, grabbing Luo Qishu, leaving the general's mansion. Is it to enter the imperial palace? Yi Hanqing's face darkened slightly, about to call someone to drag Xiao Chu away. Luo Qishu stared directly at Xiao Chu. In his mind, scene after scene about him surfaced. There was the joy of her first marriage to him, and the plate of roasted chicken he sent just in time when she was famished. She lay on the table asleep, and he draped a cloak over her to shield her from the cold wind blowing in from the window. There is a Muyuzhen standing between the two of them, like a chasm. When I came to my senses, Luo Qishu gave the answer. "No. It's because I don't like you anymore. You are a perpetual victor on the battlefield. The people respect and love you, but I feel. You make me feel heartbroken." A sense of powerlessness rose from within, and Xiao Chu fixed his gaze on her. He really wanted to ask whether, if he didn't have Nami Yunzhen, they wouldn't have reached this point, but that question was never spoken aloud. Johan Qing's words had already slipped into his ears. "Old general, are you not letting go yet?" Xiao Zhu unsteadily released Luo Qisha's hand and cupped his fists in a salute. "Pardon my rudeness. I am drunk. I will take my leave first." Yi Hanqing narrowed his eyes at his departing silhouette, with pointed meaning. "That old fellow's heart is still as villainous as ever." Luo Qisha let out a long sigh. "We are both old men too." Yi Hanqing once again raised that topic of entering the palace. Luo Qisha refused. To become the mistress of a general's household, head of a noble clan. "I would jump into such a pit like many noble women do. And now I know that love is like a bone-scraping sharp knife. If a man dotes on a woman alone, the woman will be surrounded by tigers and wolves. If the man takes no pleasure at all, the woman will live a contemptible life like an ant." Listening to her rational, well-argued analysis, Yi Hanqing felt a complex mix of emotions deep in her heart. He looked at the helpless Luo Qishu, secretly pitying her misfortune, admiring her sincerity, respecting her resilience, and valuing her choices. "Wouldn't it be fine if I treated you with indifference and apathy?" Luo Qishu slightly curved her lips. "What the emperor thinks is fine and good, but in matters between men and women, if you like someone, it is gentle and passionate. If you don't, it is indifference. And I'm at an age where, after you've looked at me for a long time, you'll get tired of me." She truly does not want to enter the palace, because she doesn't think that entering the imperial palace would make her happy. She doesn't want to get involved in palace intrigues and have her old reputation ruined, which would be absurdly funny. Outside the palace, At least she can let the sky be vast and the birds fly freely. Xiao Chu, who cares about face, would not openly mistreat her. The palace banquet ended, and Luo Qishu returned to her own courtyard. Madame Wang and Zixia had reserved a whole table of dumplings, just waiting for her to come back. Luo Qishu graciously tried one and immediately bit into a copper coin. Zixia smiled and said, "The copper coin glints with wealth. May you have abundant fortune and happiness." Listening to her auspicious words, Luo Qisha also smiled and admired some silver money. Everyone held the money, joyful as they left. The next day, Luo Qisha heard that Xiao Chu was ill. He went out alone in the middle of the night to drink, and fainted on the way back to the mansion. Fortunately, Xiao Fengye sensed something wrong, promptly led his followers out to find someone, helped the person back home, and hurriedly summoned a doctor. However, after the doctor inspected him, he sighed repeatedly and shook his head. The old general already has chronic ailments in his body. Today he is overwhelmed by great joy and sorrow, and he has drunk wine, catching a chill from the wind. Now his high fever shows no sign of abating. I'm afraid it will be hard for him to endure this dangerous illness. Xiao Fengye stood there in a daze. He didn't expect that his father, who had always seemed so healthy, would suddenly collapse, and instinctively wanted to find someone. Find whom? Xiao Fengye paused, realizing only then that the great general's mansion had lost its head of household. First he went to find Mu Yunjin, asking her to take care of his father. And then he personally went to the palace to petition the emperor for a physician. After finishing these, he returned to the bamboo garden. Xiao Zhu lay on the sickbed, still unconscious. Mu Yunjin wiped away tears beside him. How did he go from being fine to getting sick? After the imperial physician finished inserting the gold needles, Xiao Zhu suddenly began to cough, and with his eyes closed, coughed up a mouthful of blood. The crowd was astonished, but they heard him murmur softly, "Ah Chi." Upon hearing this, Mu Yunjin's face paled a little more. Her heart felt as if it were being ripped apart at this moment, with bitterness and a blade cutting her shattered heart into pieces. It seems the general will wake up soon, after taking care of him all night. I will head back first. She pressed her hand over her chest, trembling as she was helped to stand and walked out. Xiao Fengye turned to look at Mu Yunjin, who had taken care of his father all night. In his eyes there was no gratitude, only indifference. If it weren't for Mu Yunjin's existence, his father and mother wouldn't have grown estranged. And his father wouldn't be the way he is today. Once estrangement exists, it will widen and deepen. When noon arrived, Xiao Fengye was about to go to his usual lunch as usual. Upon entering the main hall, he found the red lacquered table covered with dishes. But all of them were vegetarian. He immediately frowned, impatiently asking, "How could we be out of a single meat dish? The residence has no funds left. We must be frugal with our expenditures." Mu Yunjin also wore a stern expression. Xiao Fengye glanced down from above. Extremely picky. If he were her son, she would have beaten him with a ruler long ago. The atmosphere between the two was tense and confrontational, when suddenly a servant rushed in with a panicked look. "Something's wrong. The old general's condition has worsened just now. He's been coughing up blood in his stupor." Night fell. The general's estate was brightly lit. Xiao Fengye searched for an imperial physician to needle Xiao Zhu, anxiously waiting in the corridor. Fortunately, after not more than an hour, Xiao Zhu's condition stabilized. Yet the physician's face was grave this time. "The general's illness is recurrent. I don't know when it will flare up again. I beg the eldest prince to prepare early." As if struck by lightning, Xiao Fengye remained silently in place for a long while, until his fingers, hanging at his sides, clenched hard into his palm and the pain shot through. He snapped back to awareness, suddenly turning around to search for the person he had always wanted to find but dared not seek. The moon hung on the window string. Luo Qisha frowned as he looked at his son who came to see her in the middle of the night, a hint of coldness flashing in his eyes. "I think I can report to the authorities now. The court's lawbreaking into a famous residence in the middle of the night counts as a serious crime. If you smash some things again, that would be a death sentence." Xiao Fengye listened to her threatening words, a bitter taste rising in his heart. Since when had his mother become so estranged from him? It was after his father returned to the residence that Mu Yun was being praised. Xiao Fengye looked desolate as if he had lost both parents. Tugging at his pale lips. Mother. Please go and see father. He has always been mindful of his noble gentlemanly image, always pinning flowers in his hair when he goes out. Yet at this moment he is extraordinarily disheveled. And he didn't even notice that the colors of his 2 boots at his feet don't match. This is a rush of dizziness. If it were in the past, Luo Qishu would have scolded him and then personally paired his clothes for him. But now, Luo Qisha only thinks about when he will leave. Xiao Fengye looked at her, his eyes gradually reddening. I'm not after your money. I just want you to go meet my father. He's almost gone now. After all, he was once by your side. Please pity him. Luo Qisha remained silent, staring at the piece of flesh that was peeling off from her, and her resolve wavered. Zixia mumbled to the side. What does it have to do with our master? His current bed companion isn't the virtuous Mu Shizhen anyway, since a choice was made in the first place. There's no use regretting it now. Now it's come to this, and it can only be blamed on him himself. If possible, Zixia really wants, without care, to grab the night pot and dump it on this shameless Xiao Fengye. Venting a torrent of inner resentment. Add a pair of people playing festive percussion, walking from the general's residence gate with drums and gongs. This sentence rang in Luo Qishu's ears. As if a bolt of enlightenment struck her suddenly, she calmly replied to Xiao Fengye. In the past, when your father was away, I was alone at home taking care of you and your sister. Yet being separated from your father became the reason for him keeping a concubine. Your severity has become the reason you grow tired of me. Ku Mingming, you all are the beneficiaries. Why do you want me to feel sorry for you? Word by word, like a delicate needle sinking into Xiao Fengye's heart, it pricks with pain. Xiao Fengye's face had lost all color from the blood. His lips were slightly parted, yet he couldn't refute a single word. At this moment, endless pain and guilt surge from the depths of his heart. Regret spreads over him like a tidal wave, overwhelming him and dragging him into a fathomless abyss beneath the sea, leaving him unable to breathe. Mother. I wanted my father's approval so badly. You always told us that our father was a great hero who protects the family and the country. I thought if I helped him, he would like me, look at me a little more. Now, I realize that in order to obtain those things, I have hurt you. He nearly finished speaking with a choked voice. Lu Qisha looked at him calmly, and finally agreed. It's too late today. You should go back. I'll visit the general's residence again tomorrow. Xiao Fengye was stunned, then nodded repeatedly in agreement, and then turned to leave. Lu Qisha turned and walked toward the kitchen. She hadn't eaten yet. She had been chatting with Xiao Fengye just now, not noticing that her stomach was growling with hunger. But Zixia is very quick-witted. As soon as she sees her heading into the kitchen, she understands at once. She hurries to ask Luo Qishu what she wants to eat, then suggests some dishes, and mentions that today Grandma Wang went out to buy yellow wine. That yellow wine has a rich floral fruity aroma. It's not as strong as white liquor, nor as glutinous as rice wine, but it goes very well with hairy crab. Luo Qishu agrees without hesitation. Today is a wonderful day, and a little wine to celebrate wouldn't hurt. Not long after, Nurse Matron Wang carried from the kitchen a plate of exquisitely presented hairy crabs and a pot of wine. Zixia sat to the side, carefully opened the crab's body and exposed the meat, then handed it to Luo Qishu. Luo Qishu smiled as she took the small porcelain dish, then picked up the jade chopsticks and placed a piece of meat in her mouth. Take a bite, and the mouth fills with fresh, sweet meatiness. Then a more careful aftertaste makes you feel as if you are by the seaside under the sun. Luo Qisha quickly finished one piece and, seeing two left on the plate, ordered Grandma Wang and Zixia to finish them as well, while she alone occupied the wine jar for a private drink. Zixia's envious gaze remained fixed on the body of the wine jar, and Luo Qisha joked and poured her a cup as well. If you want to drink, just tell me. I won't refuse you, just because you're young. Drink less. Zixia nodded repeatedly, took a sip, and a hint of spiciness mixed with fruit sweetness exploded on the tongue. Lu Qisha poured another cup for Grandma Wang. Grandma Wang drank a cup and mumbled. The alcohol content isn't high. That boss boasted that the old general would get drunk and collapse on the street because of drinking his wine. She buys wine from this shop precisely because it nearly cost Xiao Chu his life. What a coincidence. The wine for Xiao Chu's funeral, to their master and mistress, is actually celebratory wine, perfectly suitable for a celebration. The next day, Lu Qisha slept until the afternoon, then headed toward the general's residence. Along the way, Lu Qisha kept hearing the townsfolk whispering. They were talking about Xiao Chu moving his ex-wife's dowry, and the words were filled with disdain. At the same time, Lu Qisha realized that the Xiao Chu of now was no longer the Xiao Chu of back then. He was no longer the mighty and invincible general in the mouths of the common people, but an old man who loves novelty, dislikes old things, and drinks alcohol. The bamboo courtyard. As soon as she stepped in, Luo Qisha saw Xiao Zhu lying on the sick bed, his face pale and the corners of his eyes all lined with wrinkles like withered tree bark. What surprised her, though, was that His Majesty was also there. Upon seeing her come, Your Majesty gave a meaningful glance and spoke with his lips. Seems you still care about him. Don't besmirch my name. Luo Qisha answered him with lip movements, briskly walking over, pulling a chair, and sitting by the bed. Xiao Chu's gaze wandered away from Yi Hanqing and rested on her, asking, Are you two together? After asking this question, he closed his eyes slightly and said hoarsely, Is it to take revenge on me? Hearing this sour, jealous remark, Luo Qisha initially thought she might feel something, or that her inner anger would rise. But at this moment, only calm remained. Luo Qisha looked at Xiao Chu with a calm, indifferent expression. Why would I take revenge on myself for you? Don't make yourself so important. A trace of a smile appeared at Xiao Qian's lips, bitter and self-mocking. Yes, how could I be more important than some people? Luo Qishu quickly raised her eyes to glance at Yi Hanqing, who was strolling around the room with his hands behind his back. Seemingly not hearing these words, she turned her head back, frowning as she looked at Xiao Chu. Stop acting all affectionate like this. What kind of person are you that I must spell it out for you? 30 years ago you didn't dare to fight the Xiao family and marry the woman you loved most. 30 years later you can't bear to let go of the old wife who brings you wealth and comfort. But in the full 30 years in between, the ones who suffered the most were only me and Mu Yunjin. Those words were like a knife, carving into Xiao Zhu's face, hot and painful. He suddenly pulled himself out of those sentimental regards, his expression awkward, and even his voice could not help but carry a tinge of bitterness. Achi, I am aging, but that does not mean I do not truly love you. Unfortunately, I missed you for exactly 30 years, and only after losing you did I realize my own heart. That day when I was drunk, I kept thinking, if I hadn't brought Mu Yunjing into the residence, would you have stayed? Listening to the strong remorse in his words, Luo Qishu's heart remained completely unmoved. No. Xiao Chu paused, a wry smile spreading across his face. An expected answer. Wasn't it? After all, when he returned to the capital originally, it was to intercept her petition for a divorce edict. He was about to ask her. In the next moment, Luo Qisha spoke slowly. Xiao Chu, it was on the 7th day of the 10th month, on the day of your 50th birthday, that I discovered the existence of Mu Yunjin. I was so angered I went dizzy at the time, and I fainted at your doorstep. When I woke up, it was already dark. Xiao Chu clenched the quilt, his face pale. Luo Qishu added, During this period you didn't notice me. It shows that you don't have me in your heart. If you did, even if you only sent a messenger, as soon as the servant stepped out, you would surely discover me lying on the ground. But if it's not there, it's not there. Just as a shattered mirror cannot be broken and restored, she would not blindfold herself, generously forgiving Xiao Chu, and pretend not to see the sordid things that happened between them. After she finished speaking, Xiao Chu's heart ached faintly. He had never imagined that there had already been a rift between them on his own birthday. Nor did he expect that Luo Qishu had once fainted outside that courtyard. If people like them, as old as they are, were to faint on the street, there is a possibility they might never wake up again. Luo Qishu seemed to see through what was in his heart. Her gaze filled with a strange aloofness. The breakup of our relationship is partly because you keep a concubine. And partly because you left the capital for your job. But more than that, it's because you didn't take me to heart. Xiao Chu, do you know? I cannot eat osmanthus cake. Such a clueless remark caused Xiao Chu's body to stiffen suddenly. Memories gradually resurfaced in his mind. Last year, he brought back Mu Yunjin because he felt somewhat guilty toward Luo Qisha. So he bought her osmanthus cake on the street. But he hadn't anticipated that Luo Qisha actually cannot eat osmanthus cake. For a moment, heavy remorse crawled from Xiao Chu's heart and spread through his entire body. He hurriedly reached out to grab Luo Qishu's hand. But she dodged. And his hands suddenly fell empty. Luo Qishu looked at him coldly. Xiao Chu gazed into her eyes. If I return all the dowry you lost at the general's mansion in the past, will you grant me even a trace of forgiveness? What nonsense are you spouting? Luo Qishu said calmly and with a ridiculous look. This is what you should repay. She isn't asking him for it. Because she is magnanimous. Xiao Chu was silent for a moment. His voice hoarse. Yes. Luo Qishu didn't want to deal with him anymore. Turned to bow to the emperor. And then headed toward the door. Just as she was about to cross the threshold, Xiao Chu, with a hint of caution in his voice, leaned into Luo Qishu's ear. Aki, I heard you went on a trip to a foreign land. If there's a chance, I really hope I can walk the path you've walked. Luo Qishu let out a sneer and whispered. Your body wouldn't be able to handle it. Hearing this, Xiao Chu clenched his fists. The sound of footsteps faded. The night grew cold, lowering the gaze, and the eyes fell on the gravely ill Xiao Chu. He also replied coldly, You will not have the chance. Xiao Chu spoke, his voice hoarse. When does your majesty need your minister to commit self-slaughter? Actually, he could hold his liquor well. But that day in the palace, after being agitated, he went out and got drunk. Originally he shouldn't have sobered up. But when he was drinking the yellow wine and realized something was wrong, his vision was already going dark. In today's world, the only person who could wield such heaven-defying power to harm him would be the emperor alone. Yi Hanqing sat expressionless in the chair, staring at him. I don't need you to commit suicide. You're already old. And any day you could die. I plotted against you only to seize the military power you hold in your hands. Xiao Chu guarding Yunjin. For many years he did not return to the capital, stationed at the frontier. He could almost be considered a local prince in a borderland. How could he not be wary? Xiao Chu fell silent again. He looked at Yi Hanqing with dislike either way. After handing the tiger talisman to the emperor did not stay long either. Translates to Boom. Mu Yunjing felt as if her head was struck by something. Her vision darkened. And she nearly lost her footing, nearly stumbling and falling to the ground. She thought Xiao Chu would care about her. But he only sneered at her coldly. If you can't stand steady, you should go and get a pair of crutches as soon as possible. Yes. Mu Yunjin forced herself to steady the emotions deep in her heart. Xiao Chu looked at the wrinkles at the corner of her eye and slightly frowned. What are you here for? I heard you woke up and wanted to come see me. Before Mu Yunzi could finish speaking, Xiao Chu impatiently interrupted. My illness will be cured soon. Coming over will only disturb my peace. Still not leaving, Mu Yunzi blushed, turned and walked out. In the gloom and confusion, she unknowingly wandered out of the general's residence, through the bustling crowd, to the courtyard where Luo Qisha was temporarily staying. She took a deep breath and stepped forward to knock on the door 3 times. In a moment, a servant came out to lead her inside. Mu Yunjin surveyed the surroundings. A teal-tiled villa, a small pond and flower beds. An elegant and tranquil scene. She could not help but her eyes reddened again, murmuring, Luo Qisha, I'm really jealous of you. Before she could finish speaking, the young maid standing to the side interrupted her rather stiffly. If you're going to be envious, then buy one for yourself. Even if the general's residence is currently out of money. As the saying goes, a camel that dies is bigger than a horse. It's not possible that you can't even afford a small courtyard. Mu Yunjin forced a smile. At that moment, a familiar female voice came from inside the room. Come in. Mu Yunjin let out a long breath and stepped inside. Luo Qixia put the book down, glanced at her with a disdainful look, and not only noticed the spots hidden under makeup, but also saw the desolation in her eyes. Mu Yunjin closed her eyes and said unwillingly, You've won, but I don't not want you to win. I just want a Xiao Chu. He is my everything. Luokishu. He isn't your everything, but you have given everything. Mu Yunjin. You're beyond saving. Her tone wasn't truly sarcastic, but Mu Yunjin's face instantly grew ugly. Lu Qiushu knows what she's here for. If it weren't for Xiao Chu, Mu Yunjin wouldn't be willing to come to her. But the problem is, Mu Yunjin, what do you want from Xiao Chu? He's old and broke now, and the most important thing is that he started to dislike you. He no longer loves only you. Mu Yunjin's face was extremely pale, and she sat down in a daze. She remembered the past. The young Xiao Chu held her hand, and under the moonlight and candlelight, the fire in his eyes was still leaping. Although Xiao Chu cannot marry you, in the frontier, you are my only love. Even if I am forced to return to the capital in the future, my heart will only have you. At that time, Mu Yunjin raised a hand and tapped his forehead. If you don't do what you say, then I will personally take a sword and cut off your head. Xiao Chu curved his lips, his brows and eyes gentle. If I betray you, then let me be unmanned and my heart gouged out, the nation ruined and family destroyed, and I shall not be granted an afterlife. But later, the tender husband personally turned the sword into cruel words and stabbed them into her heart. Forgetting the vicious oath he had sworn. People are always fond of novelty and weary of old things. Flowers fade, and people inevitably grow tired of each other too. But your day of this has come really rather late. Luo Qixu sighed. Too late. You no longer have the courage to leave. But if you leave him, you won't be able to live. Before meeting Xiao Chu, Mu Yunjin wasn't living well either. Even when she's old, she is not incapable of living on her own, or of surviving. Mu Yunjin lowered her eyes and remained silent for a long moment, then self-deprecatingly smiled. You're right. Why do I care about him? Why don't I let go? For someone who isn't worth it, I stay in a place that crushes me, utterly unsatisfactory. After speaking this, she suddenly rose and left. Luo Qixia didn't linger either. It was Zi Xia, who came in with fruits. Her expression suddenly surprised. Is she leaving already? Luo Qixia just smiled and didn't say much. In the days that followed, she opened several shops in the capital and ran them conscientiously for a period of time. And then, before the Laba festival, she boarded a carriage leaving the capital. She wants to return to Zhengzhou and then travel across the great rivers north and south. The carriage left the capital and ran into the prince consort's grand royal procession. Not only were the imperial guards clearing the way, but attendants carried brooms to sweep the road, with dedicated personnel sprinkling water to prevent dust and scattering flowers for the decorations. Back and forth, there were 12 sedan chairs, with countless maids and attendants. Zi Xia and Wang Ama Mo stared in astonishment. However, soon an armored guard came to fetch Luo Qixu. Luo Qixu glanced at the two worried servants, then followed the guard, her expression calm. Behind the beaded curtain, she could also see Xiao Lihua in a red dress. Mother has a history with His Majesty. Why not tell me? Do I have to go investigate myself? Although you won't have the status of the general's lady, you can enter the palace as a concubine. And then you will still be Lao Hu's elder sister-in-law. And you can still support me. The counting beads popped onto Luo Qixia's face. She wasn't angry, and spoke softly. Xiao Lihua, you should grow up. You can't always expect others to have your back. Behind the beaded curtain, it was quiet for a few seconds. Then Xiao Lihua let out a laugh. I know. to Lu Qishu's surprise. Xiao Lihua only chatted with her for a few words and then let her go. Before leaving, Lu Qishu still said that sentence. "The crown prince is not your good man." Xiao Lihua did not respond to her. After the footsteps faded, she lifted the curtain. Her eyes red as she watched her departing figure. A lady-in-waiting asked her, "If you can't bear to part, why not keep him here?" Xiao Lihua felt as if she had stepped barefoot on a hedgehog. She suddenly raised her voice. "Do you think this prince consort is a robber? That old woman has schemed for me for years, endured a lifetime of hardship. If I let her off, it would be a good deed done today." But the ache in her heart, only she knew. At the same time, the general's mansion also learned of Luo Qishu's departure from the capital. Xiao Chu wasn't very surprised, but his heart felt as if a piece had emptied out. The dark guard spoke cautiously. "General, there is bad news." Xiao Chu came to his senses, frowning and asking, "Did Qi have some trouble?" The dark guard shook his head. "That person is quite healthy. I heard he can ride a horse back to Zhenzhou." Xiao Chu let out a sigh. The secret guard added, "Although she was blocked by the crown prince consort on her way out of the capital. The crown prince consort released her afterward." Xiao Chu instinctively wanted to berate Xiao Lihua for being willful and forgetful. But then he thought again. Isn't she just doing what he himself wanted to do? Casual fits of pique. If you want to keep them, you can keep them. Unlike him, there is no longer the right to even plead to stay. In an instant, a tangled and bittersweet emotion churned in my heart. Xiao Chao's voice carried an unusually sour note. Have you heard what they were saying? He had many questions he wanted to ask, but after 1,000 words, they all condensed into this one sentence. The dark guard fidgeted. No. Seeing him like this, a sudden sense of unease rose in Xiao Chu's heart. When he asked about the bad news, the guard's voice was like a bucket of cold water poured over his head, making him tremble all over. Mu Yuzhen traveled out of the capital for a tour. When the horse was frightened and unfortunately slipped and fell to the bottom of the cliff. 1,000 zhang 10,000 feet cliff, certainly a life-threatening fate. Xiao Zhu suddenly stood up, crying out in shock. What? He was already sickly by nature, today barely holding on. Upon hearing this news, alarm and sorrow struck him, and his vision suddenly went black. Immediately after, noisy shouts reached the ears. Dazed and sleepy, Xiao Chu had a very long dream. He saw Mu Yunjin standing at the edge of a cliff, gazing longingly toward the distant frontier. She looked back at him. "General, I regret meeting you." After speaking, she turned and leaped down without hesitation. Xiao Chu rushed over in a panic, reaching out to grab, but he got nothing. No. He could only watch blankly as Mu Yunjin's lonely figure gradually plummeted into the bottomless abyss. The bright moonlight of youth sank as well. When the warm sun rose, it fell. Behind him, Luo Qishu appeared from nowhere and pulled him back. "General, don't you want me anymore?" Her eyes glistened with tears, and her tone was a gentleness that seemed to come from another world. Xiao Zhuirang stood stunned in place, staring at Luo Qisha for a long time before hesitantly touching her face. The warm touch made his expression dazed, more unable to tell whether this was a dream or reality. Luo Qisha curved her lips into a smile, tiptoeing and kissing the side of his face. At that moment, Xiao Zhu's heartbeat seemed to stop. The emptiness deep inside has finally been filled. And in the next moment, Luo Qisha changed her expression, pushing him off a cliff with one hand. The sensation of falling surged instantly. Xiao Chu's pupils shrank sharply, his gaze fixed on the cold-faced woman at the edge of the cliff. "Aren't you deeply attached to Mu Yunjin? She is dead. Why don't you die with her?" It is said that after the old general woke up, his originally gray hair turned completely white, and his appearance aged him by 10 years. Zixia nibbled on Zhenzhou's cantaloupe while gossiping with the maids, while lying on the imperial concubine chair. Luo Qisha, holding the stove, was momentarily dazed. She remembered Xiao Chu in his youth, when he was the suitor pursued by countless people in the capital, not least because of his handsome looks. But she has no feelings for him left now. She only shook her head and said, "Old is old. Who doesn't aging happen to anyone? But he brings this on himself at this point." Zixia smiled and said, "The master is right." Meanwhile, the courtyard gate was knocked. Zixia hurriedly went to open the door, not even letting go of the melon in her hand. And at the door stood the person who should have died. Mu Yunjin. Mu Yunjin leaned on her crutch and walked into the courtyard, looking at Luo Qixia. "I came to thank you," thanking her for waking her up and for devising the ruse of pretending to be dead. Otherwise she would be entangled in her feud with Xiao Chu for the rest of her life. Unable to let go of the past. "It was you who woke up." Luo Qixia handed the newly shelled nuts to her maid and spoke lightly. "Have a taste." Mu Yunjin glanced at her and suddenly smiled. "My teeth aren't in good shape. Just eat yourself." The passing Mu Yunjin gave Luo Qixia some albums. They depict views of the frontier. She knew that Luo Qixia, though fond of wandering, disliked suffering and would not run to places on the frontier where human habitation is scarce and defenses are strict. However, she often resided on the frontier and could recall every inch of grass and wood there. Luoqi she did not ask Mu Yunjin where she would go, only wishing her a safe journey. In this battle of love, they have spent 30 years like swallows crossing paths once, one faithfully guarding the frontier for many years. Yet their hopes bore no fruit. In the end, none of them were winners. Until the last moment, they realized that only they could protect themselves. Focusing all their attention on men and children would only drag them down. Luo Qixia manages shops with great skill. Word of her talent even reached the capital, and Yi Hanqing listened in. He simply waved his hand and gave her 100 shops. After taking over, she increased annual profits by a full 40%, but she no longer wished to exhaust herself trying to be a merchant. So in the second year of the Dragon Boat Festival, she submitted a memorial to the emperor, asking him to seek another worthy person. She began to travel around the mountains and rivers, setting out from Zhengzhou, looking at the towering snow-capped mountains and the tranquil crescent moon spring under the night. When she returned, 3 years had passed. Stepping into the house, Aunt Wang spoke to her with a strange look. "Madam, the young master and the young mistress have made up." Luo Qixia paused. "How did they make up?" Aunt Wang said, "Mu Genie stayed at the Mu family for quite a while. But the Mu family wants to cling to the military governor's power. The general's residence may be poor, but at least there is a crown princess. If he gains power, the future will be the prince consort's mansion." So Mu Jia, after much thought, forcibly sent Mu Jini back to the general's residence. Instead, Xiao Fengye rushed to scold the family of people, saying they should not curse their daughter and should not treat Mu Jini as a commodity. Then, the two of them reconciled, and they even had a 2-year-old girl. Luo Qixia took a sip of tea and paused. "How did you know it's a 2-year-old girl?" Madame Wang did not answer. Instead, she turned and went inside, carrying out a swaddled infant. When Mu Jini delivered the child, she said that you had no heir. This child is also your granddaughter. In the future, you will raise her and look after her for the rest of your life. Luo Qixia felt speechless and amused at heart, about to instruct Grand Nursemaid Wang to send the child back. That chubby, pale-skinned maid looked at her and smiled. A smile with teeth showing but not eyes. Luo Qixia couldn't help but laugh along. This is a sensible child. Not long after, Luo Qixia's good friend from the capital arrived in Zhengzhou with her husband to handle some governmental affairs. 2 people chatted casually in the tea house. And for some reason the topic shifted to Xiao Zhu. "Hey, a couple of days ago on Xiao Zhu's birthday, the guests were all present, yet he didn't touch a single bite or drink a drop of wine, as if waiting for someone. Seeing him like that, no one dared to eat. And they quickly dismissed. Who knew that life is full of surprises?" Just as everyone was leaving, Xiao Zhu fainted. At last, the friend hesitated to speak. "Do you want to go see him?" Luo Qixu smiled slightly. "When he is sick, he goes to see the doctor. I still have many things to do. But perhaps on the day of his funeral, I will go back to take a look at him."